Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens, Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle. This is episode number 65. This is a long awaited and anticipated episode with a gentleman I have tons and tons and tons of respect for. You guys all know this gentleman from his years of dedication and putting in work in this community. Of course, you can tell by the box there, it's Danko. Hello, Danny. How you doing today? First off, you want to let everybody know where they can find you and go ahead and say hello.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Danny Danko on Twitter and Facebook, and at Danny Danko HT on Instagram. And now I have a Patreon page for my podcast, which is patreon.com/Danny Danko.
What is the name of that podcast?
It's called Grow Bud Yourself. Yeah. I did a podcast from 2011 until 2018 called Free Weed from Danny Danko. It was in affiliation with High Times, and recently no longer with High Times. And so I'm doing an independent podcast. And so the new name of the show is Grow Bud Yourself. But the focus is just on getting people interested in home cultivation and creating their own cannabis.
Nice. Well, I guess we'll touch on that very quickly. To me, the way things look, this is going to be a better thing for you, as the way it kind of looks like things are going over there. So I'm kind of ecstatic that you're moving out on your own and you're going to make a name for yourself.
Yeah,
a bigger name for yourself. I'm sorry.
Right. No, I mean, no matter where I've been, before High Times, I was with Headcase. We made hemp baseball hats, and wherever I end up in the future, it's always going to be the focus on the plant and, cultivation, home cultivation, releasing the prisoners, social use, once all this is said and done, but really just about changing the perception of cannabis from, this like dangerous narcotic to a healing flower that's, just part of your herbal arsenal of healing flowers.
And you have been a hell of an advocate over the years. I mean, where do we even start the work you put in here? 20 plus years just at that one magazine, not even before we get in, just that, not to mention the stuff you're even talking about here. That's a lot of dedication.
Yeah, I figured at a young age, that cannabis was for me, and I was excited about it, and it called my name. You know what I mean? As a career, and even back then, it wasn't a career. It was basically like a jail sentence, or people would ridicule you for even thinking that maybe it would be legal in the future when I got started, and now. Those people want to get into the business, So it's interesting how far we've come, but it really, for me, was always just about the flower and the healing energy of this flower, and how ridiculous it was to me that it wasn't legal, and that people were, demonizing this amazing, herb.
Can you tell us about the first time when you got started with this plant? That first time when you actually intook it. Maybe some people say they got a buzz, some people don't.
I got a buzz. Oh, I got a beautiful buzz. I really enjoyed it. I actually smoked out a snowbank for the first time with my friend. And I got, I felt really high. I felt like, this is enjoyable to me. This is enhancing. Being outside, and this is enhancing my feelings, for the world and for everything. So to me, it's just, it's always been that, it's all had that healing energy. And, you can see that with medical marijuana, and, you can see that people are using cannabis for so many different purposes. If it wasn't illegal, it would be considered along the lines of penicillin as far as the pharmacopoeia is concerned. You can isolate different parts of it and create a medicine for epilepsy, or you can, change the ratio, and now it works better for, PTSD or whatever it might be. So it is an amazing plant with a lot that we have yet to discover about it. But for me, it's just always been about the plant too. You know, I mean, I had to reach a deadline every month, and I had to write an article. And you know, we went over to Amsterdam for Cannabis Cups, and it was always very fun and enjoyable. And I can't say that there wasn't some selfishness involved as far as, you know, me being a connoisseur and wanting to improve the quality of cannabis everywhere as well. I mean, that's certainly part of it, because then you just have access to better cannabis as you travel. So, you know, it's taken me all around the world, and I can't say enough about it. You know, maybe it's not for everyone, but I think there's a lot of people that could benefit.
Absolutely. Right about what age was that when you first?
I hesitate to say, but I mean, I would say 12 years old, 12, 13 years old was like the first experiences. And then at a young age also, I mean, I was just getting into college, maybe 18, when my friend John showed me a grow closet. You know, he just had, you know, a simple 400-watt light and a grow in a closet with some plants in it. And they were flowering and they were amazing. They looked beautiful. And they were way better than what you could get at the time. You know, we're talking about, you know, 1990, you know, around that time. You know, if you were lucky to get anything green at that time. So, and these were beautiful, and they were grown in a closet, and it blew my mind. I thought you had to have acres and fields in South America or something to create it. And then when I realized all you needed was a closet, it was, you know, it was gung ho from there. I got myself a grow light and some plants, and you know, then I moved to New York, where it became more of a kind of almost a career in a way, and a way of making a living. And then I got more political about it, from, you know, working for High Times and meeting Jack Harrer, and going over to Amsterdam and seeing how it could be over there, and how we could make it that way here, you know, where you're treated in a civilized manner as a cannabis consumer, and not like, you know, some criminal that has to hide in the shadows or something. So yeah, I mean, it's just I love the plant, and it loves me back in a lot of ways. And I feel like, you know, aside from, you know, friends and family, it's really the most important other thing in my life. And shout out to everybody in the chat. There's like so many people. Shout out, you guys.
So do you remember when you peeked into that closet at 19 there, was it a certain strain, or was it some backseed that one of you guys were able to find?
It was a strain. Yeah, no, it was like at that time, it was, you know, the first era of Dutch genetics that were coming over to the States. So I believe it was NL5 Haze, which is a Northern Lights Haze cross, which was very popular with connoisseurs at the time, but really hard to find unless you grew it yourself. And I think that's a Sensi Seeds strain from those days. And so many companies were born during that mid 90s, early 90s time. A lot of the Dutch companies that, you know, laid the foundation of a lot of the genetics that still exists today.
It's kind of funny you bring that strain up, because, well, I just dropped last night a Kineos Genetics, which is a back cross of the Northern Lights #5. Been chasing, me and a few other people are chasing those classic pine terps, and that Northern Lights was, I'm like, that's where I want to start right there. That's going to be my best bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, those are the building blocks of so many of the strains. And it was a handful of things. You know, there was the Northern Lights, Skunk #1, NL5, some hazes, Williams Wonder, I think, was one of the big ones in those days. And really the whole Dutch scene, you know, came out of just a handful of seeds. And that's what's amazing now, is that we have so many more cultivars and chemovars and you know, just variety of different strains, even though, you know, on the other end, the gene pool has sort of been also diluted in a way. It's expanded and diluted at the same time in some ways, you know, but there's lots more we have to learn. We've only scratched the surface of what we can get out of the essential oils of cannabis. And that's what's exciting about, you know, the future, is there's more to learn, and, you know, so many things to discover about, you know, minor cannabinoids that we're just, you know, isolating and figuring out now.
Yeah, there's definitely just an an endless amount of things that can be unlocked with this plant. Just being around it is therapeutical, much less things that we can do with it. Uh,
Mhm.
in my book.
And so much depends on growing quality flowers. I mean, you can't get quality hash or extracts without quality flowers. You can't get all of, you can't isolate all of these different cannabinoids and terpenoids and flavonoids and all the essential oils of cannabis without growing quality flowers. And it's the one thing I've discovered is the bigger you go, the harder it is to have that quality. So it's really, the growers with the highest quality are the ones with the 4x8 tents or the, 4 or 5 lights or even 1 light kind of systems. And then once you get into these big warehouse grows, it's really hard to have fire come out of those places.
I'm glad you brought that up. And me and Smiley's Gardens there, who is in chat right now, who is a frequent guest on the show. We're talking the other day about he was wanting to know, the question he proposed at the time was what is craft cannabis? Because it sounds like you're kind of dancing on it right there a little bit. So what is your definition? What would you call craft cannabis?
Well, I can't say that I haven't had craft cannabis out of large cultivation facilities, because there are people like, Cannabiotics or IT Collective or in Seattle, who am I thinking of? It'll come to me in a bit, but there are places where people are doing it. It's just very difficult because you have to maintain the same practices as the home grower, which is, do the work, check your plants out every day, whether there's 10,000 of them or 5 of them, monitor the undersides of the leaves, take a look, feel, touch them, you know what I mean? And treat them right. And that's where fire cannabis flower is going to come from. And I think there's, that's what craft cannabis is. It's something you can, when you break it up, you can tell, the smell is there, but nothing competes with actually consuming it and seeing whether it was overfed, because I think overfeeding is such a rampant issue with cannabis. I think almost, I don't know, I hesitate to say a percentage, but well over 90% of cannabis is overfed with too much nutrient. And you can flush for a week or two at the end, but if you've been overfeeding for months, you're not flushing all that excess salts and minerals out. It's not happening. So, I'm on the side of, feed lightly and bump it up if you need to. But if you have burnt leaf tips on your plants, that's a sure sign that they're overfed. And so, craft cannabis is cannabis that's been treated with care, hand trimmed, cured in glass jars. It's not rocket science, but it's easy to make shortcuts when you're dealing with a huge amount of biomass that has to be dealt with very quickly. And then the machines come out and the, Rubbermaid tubs and things. And I think, quality is going to suffer.
I agree 100% with that. I kind of feel like I agree with everything you said there. The only thing I kind of would like to throw on that, in my opinion, would be you would kind of have to limit the number of people just to be around the plant. You know what I mean? You start throwing shifts in on the plant, and it loses that personal vibe that you're putting into the plant. I think that has a lot to do with the craft aspect.
Right. The most successful large, massive gardens that I've seen are still compartmentalized. So they still break it down into smaller segments and rooms where, if there, God forbid, there is an issue or an infestation or some kind of pathogen, that it's isolated to that space, and then you deal with it. It's almost like how you deal with this virus. You have, these plants are separated by barriers. And so that way you don't have this huge 50,000 square foot space that's all infected. You have it compartmentalized, and you're basically replicating the home grow, a bunch of different times, you know. And you're right, every person who enters is a potential carrier of all kinds of different things that can infect your plants, and you definitely need to limit that. And the best teams are small teams, you know. Even on large gardens, it's really just the dedication of really caring and going and looking at every plant is so important.
And do enjoy the idea, like you're saying there, that even some of these big grows could be divided up into like smaller teams, and so that you just don't have like a deleafing crew just working through room after room after room. I more like the idea of teams being split up. You're responsible for this, you're responsible for that. Because I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that love I expect, and just putting in positive vibes into the plant, just it means a lot.
Right, and be preventative. I mean, you got to have, you know, the tubs of, you know, bleach water that you step into before you enter the room and when you exit the room, so that you're not spreading pathogens or pests around. You know, wear the beard nets and the hair nets, and you know, I've been to some places where you can just tell them it's been visited too many times. You know, they bring in every investor and their friends, and you know, it just becomes like a procession of people visiting the garden, and it's going to suffer eventually from all that exposure to people. So, but you need some, you know, like I said, the infestation always starts with the one plant in the back corner that you didn't, you know, really check out because you didn't want to move all the other plants around or whatever it might be. And we've all been there and learned from it. And the thing you learn is prevention is so much better than having to deal with an infestation.
So, jumping back a little bit, so which came first? A little bit more of the grow, or did the activism kind of slide in next?
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it started with dealing, you know, because, you know, if you want to smoke the way I want to smoke, you don't want to be paying $50 an eighth or whatever the price might be. So, you know, you buy an ounce and you break it up and you sell it to some friends. And then you buy a little more and you break it up and you sell it to some friends. And then you realize, wait a second, I'm paying way more than it costs to make this. You know, all the cost of this is in the risk. You know, the cost of cannabis is in risk. So if there's no risk, there's, you know, it's fairly cheap to produce if you know what you're doing. And so once that realization came, you know, after I had seen the garden of my friend and realized that, you know, I could grow better herb than anything I could really buy at that point. And then there's other people who want that too, especially here in New York, where, you know, once I moved here, 95, 96, it was like the rise of the delivery services. You know, Giuliani took over. He closed all the weed spots down. You couldn't go to an actual store to buy weed like you could, you know, the old Jamaican juice bars or whatever it was. And then it became, you know, okay, well, you know, you break that down, you close that down, we start something new. And that was the rise of the delivery service, where they come to your house and they give you a selection of different things, and you pay the premium price for that, you know, selection. And this is New York, where people, you know, will pay the top dollar, and you could get, back then you could get a lot of money for high quality cannabis from these delivery services. And then I would say, you know, that was mid 90s. You know, we're talking about, I'm 23, 24, 25. And then I start realizing there's a bigger thing here. You know, this prohibition of cannabis, the reason there's this risk, you know, the reason people will pay this type of money is because there's people in jail, and there's people, you know, having their lives ruined, and really bad situations happening, you know, by the thousands all over the world. And then you start realizing, you know, you learn about hemp, and you learn about medicinal cannabis, people treating epilepsy, people treating AIDS wasting syndrome, you know, the symptoms of chemotherapy. You meet these people. I mean, as a High Times employee, I met these people. I talked to them. They told me it saved their lives. I met veterans with tears in their eyes. This plant saved my life. I've met seniors and people just from all walks of life who've come around to this idea that this plant has something to provide us. You know, it's here to help us if we choose to, you know, let it. But that, happened over time, meeting Jack Herer and becoming more and more political, going to the Boston Freedom Rally, going to Hash Bash, going to the Seattle Hemp Fest, the Million Marijuana March here in New York, going to Amsterdam and Barcelona and Vancouver, going all around the world and meeting the people of the cannabis culture and realizing that, we're an oppressed culture, and we're all walks of life, and we just love this plant, and we love it enough to like take the risk to actually do this. And not all of us are lucky enough to stay out of jail, right? And so we got to fight for them, and we got to fight for the plant, and we got to free it. And we have come a long way, right? But we still got a long way to go, and it hasn't all gone the way we want it to. And the corporations have jumped in, and but all that's going to shake out in the end. The important thing is for the quality to remain, for home grow to remain, to free the prisoners, to have places where we can get together and consume, with social use, and just make it so it's more like an herb in your garden than some dangerous narcotic drug. And that's been the mission. And we, like I said, we've come a long way, but there's way further to go. You can tell I like to talk about this stuff.
Oh, good. I love the passion. It's people like yourselves and the years and years of dedication that's helped get us to where we are now.
Well, it's part of it is there's an anger there too, because like I said, when I started, we were ridiculed. We were laughed, out of places. People thought it'll never be legal. The government will never allow it. It's there's too much money and this and that and the other. You heard every argument against it, and you were told you were just a lazy stoner and you just want to smoke weed and this, that. And it gets to you after a while, because the reality is this is a plant that's saving people's lives. I mean, you're meeting them and they're talking to you, telling you all about it. And not for nothing, it's also sending their kids to college. It's allowing them to pay for things they couldn't have before. It's the whole Northern California economy ran on it, runs on it. It's massive. It's this huge multi-billion-dollar industry, but it's all underground and taken over by, criminal gangs and this and that and the other. It doesn't need to be that way. And when you come to realize that, it's like, you have to be political about it, because, otherwise you're just standing silently while this, BS continues to go on. And I think, like I said, it's important that people learn. And again, growing is a political act, right? Creating cannabis out of thin air, like I call it modern day alchemy. You're taking light and air and seeds and water and creating a healing flower, and that helps people. And so even cultivation is a political act, and that's really been my lane, as far as, once I started, getting political about it and working for High Times and doing all of those things. My goal was to encourage people to grow their own. And if they don't grow their own and never ever want to grow a plant in their life, at least appreciate what quality cannabis looks like, how it's produced, what it tastes like, what it feels like. At least if you're a connoisseur, be a connoisseur. Don't be a pot snob, right? I mean, try it all. I love equatorial sativas that are grown out for 18 weeks or flowering or whatever, because it's a different feeling, and it's something that's coming from the same plant but completely different. And so experience all the different places that this plant can take you. I'm passionate about it. What can I tell you? I love it.
I agree. I wish everybody, I think that the people that are just on the smoking or using side are completely missing out on a ton of that, the most beneficial aspects, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, as a grower, there's always the parts you keep for yourself too. I mean, like you're not selling the best quality top nuggets. Those are the ones that are going in your private head stash jar. And any beautiful hash that you make, the first sift is the one that you hang on to. So there's no feeling like consuming cannabis that you created out of thin air yourself. I mean, nothing beats that, whether you're a medical patient, connoisseur, aficionado, you know, dabbling in growing CBD strains for yourself, whatever reason you're doing it, there's nothing like consuming something you made yourself, you know. It's great.
I agree, and that's why I say that they're robbing themselves are some of the best part. You know, that first finished crop is, you know, if it is or if it isn't, it's the best, isn't it? You know, that first one you've harvested, like I said, it might not be, but it is to you the most self gratification smoke that you'll ever have is that first round.
Right.
And
It's true. You know, the story I hear over and over from growers is that the first time was amazing because they put all their energy and effort and everything went into it. And then usually they have that sophomore slump where the second or the third one, they kind of just, you know, I'll do a little less, you know, something ends up going wrong. And all the lessons are learned there as well. You know, you can read all the grow books in the world, but if you haven't dealt with the infestation uh, on your own, you really don't know what to do. And once you have, you know, then your main concern is of not having to do that again. And so, you know, again, you're always learning. Like people call and say, "Oh, Danny, he's an expert." I'm not an expert. You know, I learn from listening and you know, constantly being aware that there's no one perfect way to grow cannabis. There's no one strain to grow. There's no, you know, one of the beauties of the plant is it contains multitudes. You know, there's something in it for everybody, really.
there is too, and again, I don't mean to keep beating on that growing drum, but man, there's just so many great things. You know, I was an advocate for, you know, the medical use and recreational use to a point, but it wasn't until I actually started, you know, growing the plant and being a caregiver that it gave me a whole new aspect on what the plant could actually is capable of. And I'm still to this day blown away by its powers
Yeah,
in
I
all
mean,
aspects.
think about that from a medical standpoint. I mean, for someone who's creating their own medicine in their home, you know, there's nothing like that. I mean, you don't have to walk down to the pharmacy and you know, show a prescription or anything. You're just growing it from a plant and then consuming it, and in a multitude of ways too. I mean, that's the other great thing over the last 20 years. I mean, you know, we had pot brownies and we had blunts and we had bongs and we had joints, you know, and that was pretty much it, you know, pipes. But now you've got tinctures and topicals and edibles, you know, a wide array of edibles and isolates and distillates and, you know, BHO extractions, solventless extractions. I mean, the sky's the limit, you know, I mean, like, you know, with our cannabis cups, it's like you know, at some point we're like, are we going to have like 40 different categories in this event? Because each category then suddenly starts splitting into, you know, you've got a non-solvent hash category, and now you're looking at, okay, well, where does rosin fit into that? You know, where does, you know, fresh frozen and this and that. So there's just all of these, you know, multitude of ways to consume cannabis as well. I mean, you've got eye drops and you know, sublingual tablets, and you know, it's just amazing what wide variety of ways that cannabis can be consumed. So, you know, for the average Joe that just thinks, oh, you know, smoking a doob or whatever, it's not that. There's so many, you know, I mean, even the way that edibles hit you, right? I mean, I feel like, you know, if it's a distillate or isolate, it kind of comes on pretty quickly and then goes away pretty quickly, right? Whereas if it's made with like oil or butter, it takes a little longer to hit you and then has like sort of a longer lasting effect. So, you know, there's so much, you know, to discover still about about the plant, and I think it's pretty amazing that we've come to a place where, you know, you can get lemonades with cannabis in it, or you can have a pain relief balm that you can use on an injury. Um, you know, it's amazing. It's like Jack said. I mean, the plant can save the world, and it's really one of the only things that can. And like Lester Grinspoon, Dr. Grinspoon said, one day it will be considered, along the same lines as the discovery of, penicillin or any other, amazing thing that helps people, medicinally.
So there's so many things I want to ask you, and stories I'm sure you could tell.
I got
trying
time.
to like stay. I'm trying to draw you back so I can kind of keep somewhat of a consistent timeline here. So we've hustled a little bit of blood, and I think we're all guilty of that. I mean, I know I have. In my math, what you told me there is find 3 friends that want a quarter, and you got yours for free. Is basically how that worked back in the day.
I mean, that's how it starts.
Yeah,
but inevitably over time, then it becomes a quarter pound, and then that quarter pound becomes a pound. And now you're looking at, like time, for something that, is ultimately just an herb or a vegetable, a flower. And that's why I never understood about the laws too, where they're like, okay, anything less than an ounce is legal. Like, where do you think that ounce comes from? You know what I mean? It comes from a pound. And where do you think the pound comes from? You know what I mean? Like, it never made sense to me where they were just like, okay, 7 grams is legal, but anything more than that is illegal. Like, where do you think those smaller amounts come from? That was always very puzzling to me about the rules, but I kind of get it, because it's like the consumer ultimately makes the rules. It's not the producer or the distributor. It's the end user is the one that is going to be the deciding factor if it's getting voted on or that kind of thing. You know what I mean? But I always appreciated, the lessons that were learned from the underground as well, because I learned a lot of important lessons about, that I can take into the real world from that experience. And I think, a lot of that has to do with any sort of longevity that I've had, over time in the industry, is that, you just have to give it up for the plant and treat everyone with respect, and just try to spread the good news and the good cheer, and, let people know about, the things that because when you're going over to Amsterdam and you're meeting all of your heroes, right? And it's like marijuana fantasy camp, you want to come home and preach to the non-converted and teach them all about how it can be, and that it can change. And that's the important thing, I just look at how much has changed, whether it be the political side or the cultivation side. I mean, look at the grow lights and the systems and the nutrients and, all the whole industry. It's crazy how much things have changed, since the early days of people fighting for cannabis freedom. And that goes back to the 60s and even before that. So, always got to honor the OGs and the elders of that came before my time, and especially the ones that have passed. I think that's really important too. We got to tell our history. One of the things I'm most proud of in my podcast, history, is if you go back from 2011 and listen, you're going to hear the wisdom of some people that are long gone. You know what I mean? But their information is still there. Whatever grow tip or whatever motivating factor that helped them, whatever their origin story is, how they got interested in cannabis, what cannabis means to them, how to grow high quality cannabis. All those things are there as time capsules of an earlier time. And like I said, some of those people are gone now. So it's really, my highest level of pride goes to maintaining the legacy of the history of this plant, and the history of the people that fought for it.
I think it's kind of funny to hear you say that, you go over to Amsterdam and you meet some of these people that were influential to you, and then you come back all fired up, when I know from firsthand that you've been that person to a lot of people. Wow. You've been always very very approachable. I've never seen you in any of these events where you were like, get away from me or what. I've had the pleasure of meeting you and taking pictures with you several times, and you've sent me off in that direction. Holy shit, I met Danny Danko today. You know what I mean? Look at this shit, passing around that picture, and it's that kind of just meeting, getting out there, shaking hands is another part the very powerful part of this planet. I feel like
I love it.
I kind of feel like I'm beating on an endless drum here, but just this conversation here, just getting out in the community, and it's an amazing feeling just to be able to, just talking about it is a very medicinal effect. Right now, I'm all lit up. I'm feeling good, and from just being able to have this experience, as I know most people are when they talk about cannabis, it lights up that passion and gets good vibes pumping through the body that undoubtedly are good for you. Uh, so
Yeah.
there's so many amazing aspects to this.
Yeah, I mean, I so appreciate that. I mean, I don't think of it in those terms of like celebrity or anything like that. I mean, to me, it's like the message is in the flower. You know what I mean? And like, I'm an ambassador for the flower. So I, and all the great people that I've ever met, who I've looked up to, that have treated me that way, I've always remembered, whether it be Willie Nelson, Jack Herrer, or anyone, they take the time to because they've been there and they understand, like, you know, it's about the message. You know what I mean? It's not about the person. And anybody who starts thinking it's about them, and I mean, maybe there's a place for that. I don't know, but that's not really my lane. I mean, to me, it's just the herb is the message, and I'm a messenger of it, and so are so many other people, and and so can everybody be. I love being able to go to a foreign country and not even be able to speak the language, not even and then you just put your two fingers together to your lips, and you find the crew, by the fountain or wherever it may be, and you made a friend. You know what I mean? Without even sharing a language or anything else. And I think that's the beauty of cannabis, is that it's a uniter. You know what I mean? It's not a partisan issue. It's not something, even though sometimes it gets pulled into different, things like that. It really isn't. I mean, everybody smokes. It's like, when you really get down to it, so many people from so many different walks of life, and you'd be surprised. I mean, I've met people you'd never think were cannabis people, and they give you the wink wink or the nudge nudge, and maybe for whatever reason they have to hide it for their job or for their community or whatever, but here they are, letting me know, on the sly, hey, I get it. And I'm talking about politicians, celebrities, and people you'd never think, and they're closet stoners, and I don't think they should be closet stoners. I love it when people aren't closet stoners. But I get it too. I mean, there's reasons for everything, and I understand. Particularly people who are parents and things like that. There's still a stigma, and that's the one thing we really have to fight against as well, is this stigma of cannabis consumers as somehow not good people, or irresponsible, or all these different labels that they put on us, because we're everybody. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, it's rare for me to meet someone who's against cannabis. I mean, it's always an eye opener when I go on like a news show or something, and there's somebody there who's against it, and not 99 times out of 100 they're getting paid to be against it. Whether it be Project Sam, or one of these organizations. I mean, they're getting money, and who are they getting money from? It's like the pharmaceutical and alcohol, prison guard unions. That's not people who care about your well-being or your safety or your health. They just have a vested interest in keeping us down, and keeping prisons filled, and keeping petrochemicals flowing, and all these crazy things. And they don't care about you at all. You know what I mean? Even the ones who aren't getting paid to be. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to find now. at this point. I have friends in the news media that they're at a loss at this point for having someone come on and do the counterpoint, do an anti-marijuana thing or anti-cannabis thing. It's just not cool.
Do you have anything close by you can smoke on, Danny?
I have some dabs. Actually,
I was going to ask you if you don't mind if I smoke very much.
No, please do. I mean, of course. Yeah. This is actually some Michigan grown. I think this is Ghostbusters right here. Nice. Forbidden fruit. And I believe this is also Michigan covert extracts. And strawberries and cream.
Covert's definitely bringing some fire, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's for sure. I've been counting on cannabis and extracts as 100% essential during this time. I can't emphasize strongly enough that how important cannabis is to riding this whole thing out. And let's smoke. I just have
what a great thing.
I just have this little dabber thing, dab straw thing,
Oh, nice. Yeah, who would ever thought they would have come? We'd have seen that days where we seen a pandemic come through, and they're like, "No, stay home, smoke cannabis." And by the way, you are essential. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime.
Yeah, my hometown of Brookline, Massachusetts, right there, just right outside of Boston. Just this week, they have recreational sales now. Fully legal. I mean, with social distancing and everything going on, but it is pretty amazing that, we went from where we were to now being essential, And I think, it's going to change the face of cannabis after all this is over. I think, federal legalization is well on its way. Something has to give. There has to be, right now, the whole West Coast, from Washington, Oregon, California, all rec. You have Michigan, you have Massachusetts, and it's creeping everywhere at this point, and it's getting to a point where it has to change on a federal level. We need the banking situation to be resolved. We need the expungement of all the criminal records and the release of any nonviolent cannabis prisoner to happen yesterday. I mean, that should already be a done deal. I don't want to, people should definitely sign up for Last Prisoner Project. And I know you mentioned no downers, but I do want to, I got to give a shout out to the prisoners and the people who fought the good fight. And, there but for the grace of Jah goes any one of us who loves this plant and is willing to take those risks. So they need to be released immediately, and they need to, have their records expunged and be able to vote and all of that, get jobs, get, organ transplants and enjoy being with their families. And they should also be allowed into the cannabis industry. I don't understand this, this rule that where, if you have a cannabis felony, you can't be in the cannabis industry. It doesn't make any sense. These are some of the experts, if you want to call them that, you know what I mean? So that's a ridiculous rule. And I mean, in all honesty, those should be the first people in line for jobs in the cannabis industry, is the people who actually suffered under the, falsehoods of prohibition. And you can turn all those prisons. I know people are worried we're going to have empty prisons. No big deal. Those are compartmentalized rooms. You turn those into grow rooms. The prison guard union guys can become marijuana grow union guys, and you just turn those jails into cannabis production centers. And, you're taking a negative, turning into a positive. And I think it's a win-win for us all.
Yeah, so, 10 by 10 would make
so vote Danko.
If you ask me.
Vote Danko in November, and I will turn prisons into cultivation centers.
There you go. That's funny. Yeah, you'd be a good president, I think. I'd vote.
I don't know. There's a few skeletons in the closet, probably. First off, admitting to pot dealing is probably
it can't be any worse than anything that them politicians got floating around in their
actually, yeah. Well, they're inventing new ways to fuck things up at this point. So, can I swear on here? I'm sorry. My first swear leaked out.
Oh, you. There'll be one more through here. There'll be at least one
So
more, I'm sure.
yeah, again, like, I'm joking and laughing, but the reality of the situation is there are nonviolent people that are in jail for ridiculous sentences. I mean, multiple decades. I've met them. This is not a myth. This is not bullshit. Oh, there it is. Another swear. It's real. It's really happening, and it needs to end immediately. Um, so, Last Prisoner Project is a wonderful organization. Life for Pot is another great one that's out there, and they're all working to help the prisoners while they're locked up and to help get them out as well. So it's an important issue for me. Like I said, could be any one of us, and the thought of taking a peaceful cannabis person and putting them into that type of situation. And if you've ever visited a prison or gone, uh, it's no place for anyone really, but it's certainly no place for you know a nonviolent, peaceful cannabis person. I mean, really. So that's my little rant.
Oh, you're right. I mean, them are the guys that built the system and help push it along to this far. Just because we've taken the reins from them and ran in a little bit looser environment doesn't mean that they shouldn't be protected and
Yeah,
respects paid.
yeah. And Jack Greenstock mentioned in the chat, yeah, Damian Marley bought an old closed prison and put a grow in it. So shout outs to Damian. He put those words into action. And like I said, there's there's such a role for this plant to play in our future. And it's not just America. We're talking about the whole world. You know what I mean? A lot of those places that take their cues from us, and all their laws are based on, UN treaties that we forced them into and things. So the rest of the world can benefit too. There's people listening to this all over the world. I can see in the chat. There's people, in Europe and everywhere else. I mean, I look at the stats for my podcast. There's people everywhere: Saudi Arabia, India, New Zealand, just all over the world. And it's the plant needs to be free worldwide. And hemp, cannabis, all of it. There's really no reason to restrict THC levels or have any of this kind of over regulation and overtaxing of our industry. Just let us grow. We're farmers, man.
It is pretty crazy the reach this plant has. It's worldwide. And you're right, we do have some people from around. I just want to give some shout outs here because they're all. We got some viewers from Australia,
Nice.
Germany,
The
UK,
Mulabimbi
and
madness.
Canada, and India that watch along almost daily to this program. And I think that's
All,
awesome, man.
all of
Some
these,
little guy from Michigan just reaching out and touching people across the world. It leaves me speechless every day. It's
yeah,
really
all those
crazy.
places have their own cannabis histories too. I mean, and like strains that they're known for. I mean, just thinking of Australia, the Mullumbimby Madness and the Nimbin Mardi Gras, and even one of the great breeders who just passed a couple of years ago, Neville Schoenmakers, of the original Neville's Haze, and one of the first seed banks ever in Holland. He was a Dutch Australian, and he lived much of his life in Australia, breeding cannabis and koi fish, of all things. But so, in India, I mean, India has a huge, rich tradition of ganja and bang lassies, drinks made with mango and cannabis, and happy pizzas with cannabis on the pizza, and Goa, where you can go and just bug out for 6 months and dance on the beach. And I mean, every one of these places has a rich cannabis history. Even where I was born in Russia, Soviet Union, hemp rope from Russia was like the treasured hemp rope. Napoleon invaded Russia because they would only sell their rope to England, and French sailors didn't want to get on ships that didn't have Russian hemp, because it was like inferior hemp. So there's these rich histories that every country has with cannabis, and every culture has all around the world. This amazing plant that spread with civilization all everywhere and acclimated to the places where it was. So in Russia, it became autoflowering hemp. In the Caribbean, it became these long flowering sativas that take forever and wispy, but and it was bred for different reasons, right? So in Southeast Asia, they're making tea with it. In Afghanistan and Iran and those areas, they're making hashish. In Lebanon and Morocco, those are hashish cultures. So they're choosing plants based on hash production, and in Southeast Asia, they're choosing based on sativa effect from tea and things. So it's all traveling all around the world and creating all of these new varietals that become land races for those particular places, and then become the building blocks for brand new genetics that when you cross this one and that one, you get something brand new. And it's beautiful, and the potential is still to come.
Very true. Very true. So we're gonna revert back to the last question about the younger days, the slinging days. So what strains were passing through then at that time? What were you lucky enough to get your hands on at that point?
Well, I guess early on, it would be the strains of the '90s, White Widow, White Rhino. If it had white in the name, it was like very popular back then. Uh, um, when Strawberry Cough came around, that was kind of a staple for us. Of course, being here on the East Coast in New York, the Sour Diesel was a big one. But if you're looking for the best, you're willing to also like explore different regions. So ultimately, a lot of things were coming from NorCal to the East Coast in those days, and of course, the old Blue Dream staple, and a lot of different things. We in Western Mass, you had the Chem strains too. You had Mass Super Skunk and Chem Dog and 91 and D and all of those. And if you could get your hands on some OG Kush from SoCal, that was always great. And Perps. We used to go up to Vermont and pick up Perps up there to bring back down to Boston. And, there's just so many different strains. And then now, of course, you've got, Dositos and all these like different kind of gassy, fruity things. I wrote a whole book of strains, actually got it right here. In 2011, which was the High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains. And then, of course, I have my second book as well, the Grow Book, Cannabis Beginner's Guide to Growing Marijuana.
Lucky enough to have a signed copy of that one.
Nice. But the strain book was really fun to put together because, it's like you just get to do a lot of research and sampling. And I think that's one of the funnest parts of the job has been traveling around the world, smoking all the different strains that people have to offer in all these different places, and so much unique varietals and places that are kind of made famous by a certain strain in a way too, which is kind of funny. Every place has their kind of like staples, and that's always been very interesting to me. And they change over time as well, obviously, but I love the variety. I don't know if I could just, people always say like, on a desert island, what would be your strain, or what's your favorite strain? It's like, it's so hard sometimes. I mean, I typically just go with Strawberry Cough because I grew it and I love it and I know it, and it's a no-brainer, and I love the uplifting feeling that I get from it. But if I only had to smoke that all the time, that something would be missing. I love the variety of mixing it up. So, I love it all. I don't complain when I'm in a place where, people would say, oh, this is mids, or it's different. It's something different. And look, if it tastes bad and doesn't burn right, that's a problem. But, I can usually find something to enjoy in cannabis just because I don't know, I love it. And I loved it since the days of Brick Mexican. So that's how I love it. Because I even love pulling seeds out of it and dealing with all that excess leaf and stems and seeds. So I go back to those days when you actually had to de-seed your weed, and it's definitely improved in quality over time. And I think that's an amazing thing and a great thing. And I'm honored to have played any kind of role in that, because again, for selfish reasons, I want to smoke better weed. You know, I love high quality cannabis, and I don't want to smoke a ton of it to get to that feeling. So it's nice when, you know, a little bit goes a long way. But again, that's not about THC percentages either, because of course people are like, oh, you know, this is 30%, this is 28%, this is, and there's so much more to it. I mean, you and I know, you know, THC percentage is important, sure, but it's really about the interaction of the other cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenoids, or terpenes, as people say, with the THC. So it's really much more about the whole plant and the essential oil there than it is really just about level of THC. And once you're up over 15, 20%, it's like, it works. And then it's about how it works and what ways. And that's much more subtle and based on the interaction of all those other cannabinoids.
So I'm trying to keep you on track here.
I'll keep going.
It's awesome.
I mean, that's also another reason, you know, I love sun grown. You know, people love to, you know, poo-poo on outdoor weed, but there's no better grow light than the big free grow light in the sky. So, you know, if you're worried about, you know, rain and dust and elements and things, then get a greenhouse and put supplemental lighting in there and get the best of both worlds. But there's nothing like really true organic sun-grown herb. It's just on a different level. And I've had great indoor weed. I'm not saying that's not, you know, a possibility, because it is, and I've grown it and I've smoked it, and it's great. But nothing beats sun-grown cannabis in as far as the essential oil that's produced by the sun, you know. And not for nothing, it's way more sustainable and way cheaper if you don't really care about sustainability, but it's also cheaper to produce, and makes for better hash, makes for better everything. So I think the future is definitely in, you know, sun-grown.
So you want to tell me a little bit about, you know, there was the time there, but you want to tell me a little bit about some of the adventures you talked about, hats and whatnot, before you got into your High Times adventure. You want to tell me about some of the time before the High Times?
Yeah, well, I worked for a company called Headcase. We made hemp baseball hats. So this would be like 1997, 1998. And that was actually one of the first cannabis cups, the first cannabis cup I went to. I went as a vendor and working at a booth selling hats. And next to me, in the booth next to me, was Jack Harrer. I've definitely told this story to friends before, but I learned a lot on that trip. The whole time he was trying to feed me mushrooms. And I was, you know, a young man trying to work a booth. Of course, on the last day, I did eat some mushrooms, but we did spend a lot of time smoking joints and pontificating and talking, mostly him talking to me and telling me about cannabis. I was lucky enough to get a signed copy of his book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And it's an experience I couldn't have dreamed of, you know, or paid for. You know, it just happened to be that my booth was next to his booth, and, you know, he spent time talking to this young kid at the hemp hat booth. And we made hats for everybody. We made hats for Sensi Seeds and Paradise and the Greenhouse and Gray Area, all the companies, TH Seeds. We made all their hats because we made them out of hemp in New Jersey. And so that was my sort of entree into the business, was going over to a cannabis cup before I even worked for High Times. But it definitely opened my eyes. I mean, we were the only two kind of cannabis related companies on the East Coast. I started playing for the softball team, the High Times Bong Hitters. So before I worked for High Times, I was on the softball team. And of course, you know, like you said, the dealing was still going on at the time. I think a lot of the softball people and the company people liked my herb that I was growing or that I possessed at the time. So it wasn't hard to make friends at the company at that time. And when a job came along, it was literally like answering the phone, breaking down boxes, I took it. I wanted my foot in the door. And I didn't care because I knew that you get trips like Amsterdam Cannabis Cup out of it. And to me, the perks, were way more important than the salary or what I had to do. And little by little, just learned about, media, learned about magazines, learned about events, learned about publishing, learned about the internet, all these things came along during that time and worked my way up. I remember 2004 is when Kyle Cushman left for California. And, I sort of took over in writing in the cultivation department at that point. And that was really a huge thing for me. And then Jorge Cervantes decided to basically retire from doing his column and then hand it over to me as his hand-picked successor. Really life-changing for me at that point too. So those people and my employers at the time having the confidence in me to write articles about cultivation and strains and how-tos and step-by-step and all that, because I knew how to grow and I knew how to write, and I just I didn't know if I could put the two things together, but it worked. And little by little, sort of made a name for myself. And of course, like I said, the travel is so key and important to that, because without that, you're just sitting in a cubicle in an office building like anybody else. But when you're visiting, grows in Vancouver Island or in Spain or Holland, or you're going and even in the Bronx, or wherever it might be, and you're meeting the people who are part of that side of the industry, then you're getting an institutional knowledge that not many people have, and then sort of translating that to people through articles and videos and social media and podcasting and whatever else. So to me, it's just always been about the message. That's why I love podcasting too, because it's free for people to listen. They can just listen and get free information. And I always thought, why charge people $6 or $7 for information that should be free? Charge the advertisers, right? Charge the people who want to reach those people. But you want to reach as many people as possible, because you have this message that's so important. And so to me, it's just, it's been a pleasure and an honor to serve cannabis, you know what I mean? And like I said, that if that elevates me to a place where people are psyched to read my books or to my articles or to meet me, and then I inspire them, then that's just icing on the cake. That's amazing. And, it's an honor, and it's like something that I cherish, that feeling of because I know how I feel about Jorge and about, Ed and about Kyle and about Dr. Grinspoon. They're my heroes. And for me to be somebody's hero, it's humbling, but it's awesome. It's so cool. And if cannabis is the real hero, then we all win.
So I can't help but wonder if I have some friends that have been around the high time circle there, and I have some friends that are in the cannabis community as well. And I think it's funny that it sounds like, and again, I don't know if there's any truth to this at all, Danny, but it sounds like from your story of meeting Jack there, that it could have inspired you not only for your activism, but I hear that I've heard stories that you can have a little bit of that Jack attitude in yourself there, as far as the psilocybin goes there. That you've been known to have some good times there as well.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a tremendous role for psychedelics to play in this, sort of plant-based revolution that I think is going on as we speak, and that we're in the middle of without quite realizing. I think, people like Paul Stamets are so important to me. What he's teaching people about fungus, about psilocybin, about mushrooms in general, and about mycelia and how those mycelia interact with plant roots. This is the first first relationship on Earth between two different things is the relationship between fungus and plants underground. And this is something that goes on underneath us everywhere we go. There's this, single cellular organism called mycelia that we know very little about. We don't understand in many cases why mushrooms sprout here and not there, what relationship they have with this tree's roots or that tree's roots. And it's just so important and special for us to respect fungus and mycelia and what role they play as a living thing on this planet. I love mushrooms. I love edible mushrooms. I love all, I'm not a huge truffle fan, but I love all of the different mushrooms you can forage, mushrooms you can buy. And I think that the psychedelic mushrooms as well are so important to our understanding of ourselves and our place, our role as a being on this planet, rather than, just humans and animals. I think we're part of this huge ecosystem, and mushrooms help to teach you that. But there's also, DMT and ayahuasca and LSD and so many other of these entheogens or whatever you want to call them that are very important, but also important in a way that, like, this isn't something you take to party on a Friday night with your buddies drinking beer. I mean, these are things that are meant to teach you something about yourself or your role that you play, or about dying, or about living, or about maybe some uncomfortable truths about yourself that you don't necessarily want to accept. Ways of dealing with trauma, massive for dealing with trauma. Couples therapy, helping people in hospice. I just think there's so much potential to psychedelics, but we have to understand how to use them, right? I mean, it's all well and good to just go on a camping trip and take some shrooms and stuff, and that's fun and great, and you might learn a lot of things too. But I think set and setting are so important when it comes to psychedelics, and you have to be prepared for the experience mentally. And again, it's not for everyone either. I mean, certainly people who have mental health issues should probably refrain. But I think there's a lot we can learn from them, and I think certainly should not be throwing people in jail for them. I mean, that's outrageous. Prohibition of anything, I think, is ridiculous. It's something you learn, and it's an easy argument to make with people, because if you immediately made tobacco, illegal along the lines of a Schedule 1 drug, they would immediately be tobacco dealers and a whole thriving underground economy in cartons of cigarettes and packs of cigarettes and tobacco growing and illegal facility. And it would all just replace, alcohol during alcohol prohibition, or cannabis during cannabis prohibition, or any other substance. You know what I mean? So demand creates supply. You can't produce demand. So if someone demands it, there's going to be a supply. It's pretty obvious. So I think criminalizing almost anything that's like a victimless thing like that. And I mean, I would even include prostitution as well as something that's ridiculous to be illegal. I mean, there's a demand, create a supply, make it clean and healthy. And sex workers deserve respect as workers. They're doing a job, and that's an important job, obviously, because again, we're talking about millions and billions of dollar industry. I've met people that work in that industry, and it's really crazy because they face the same stigma we face as cannabis users in a different way. Here's a product that everybody consumes, everybody watches pornography, everybody, this is something pretty universal, and yet the people who do the thing to provide us with that are frowned upon and looked down upon, and somehow, the stigma's on them that they're, lesser human beings. And I think, we as people who suffered from the cannabis stigma should understand that there's that stigma for sex workers, there's that stigma for people of color, there's that stigma for the LGBTQ community, there's that stigma for transgender people. It should make you more compassionate, to be honest. All of these things, these plant-based medicines are meant to teach us something. They come from the earth for a reason. That mycelial interaction with those plant roots happens for a reason. The a mushroom makes you trip and feel a certain way for a reason. Okay. I mean, it's evolutionary. It's a way to evolve into a better species and a better uh, conservator of your surroundings, if I may. I don't know. I mean, uh, I think it's important. And there's an amazing film right now called Fantastic Fungi, or Fungi, depending on how you like to pronounce it. But it's got Paul Stamets and a lot of amazing mycologists and people who talk about their experiences with mushrooms, as well as some incredible award-winning photography and video of mushrooms growing in like slow motion, stop action kind of stuff. So really incredible film and very important for people to understand. And again, we're just scratching the surface of this relationship between fungus, plant, and human and animal.
Yeah, I'm very stoked that we're finally looking to Mother Earth to heal ourselves instead of some of this pharmaceutical bullshit that we're mixing together in pots that are making people sick. I mean, we've known about this stuff for years and years and years, thousands of years, but for some reason we just decided to turn our back on knowledge that was there this whole time. It just seems stupid.
Yeah, and we also feel like, oh, this is the way it always has been. But the truth is, it hasn't. I mean, the truth is, prior to, World War II, basically, we're talking 60, 70 years tops, there was no factory farming, there was no chemical nutrients, there was no, there wasn't this industrialized system of feeding people. This is a new thing, right? And this way of, having everything be made out of plastic and petrochemicals, and this reliance that we have, it's not a foregone conclusion. It's not something that has to be. And again, there are people who are alive today who were alive before this all began. So all of the uh, waste and pollution that has happened in the post World War II era, it's not a foregone conclusion. It does not have to be that way, and it's not the way it always was. Right? People grew organically prior to that because there was no alternative to organic growing. Wars were fought over bat guano. Certain islands that had large, caves and things and large stores of bat guano were hotly fought over, in wars because of the potential for using that bat guano as a nutrient for fruiting trees and flowers and plants. So this whole idea, this whole petrochemical revolution is young, and we don't have to fall for it. We don't have to deal with it. It's, all the pharmaceutical, all of this happened in the last 50, 60 years. It's not the way it has to be, and it's not the way it was prior to that. And it's hard for people sometimes to remember, but you really have to look back to the past and see cannabis was a medicine, as part of the pharmacopoeia in the late, 1800s and early 1900s. You can see it. There's evidence of the jars and everything. So it wasn't always demonized. This happened in the 30s, and it happened after the end of alcohol prohibition because they needed something new to latch onto. And here was an easy thing to vilify, certain people with. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's the real lesson of psychedelics and of all the plants medicine, is that it's like, go back to the future, look to the past for the solution. It's there. It's in composting, it's in no-till gardening, it's in compost teas and brewing your own, improving upon your living soil year after year rather than depleting your soil year after year. It's like a no-brainer, but you have to detach from that that chemi way of thinking. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's easy to cling to the simple solution, but the simple solution is almost always not the best solution.
Well, while I'm sitting here listening to you speak about all this stuff, it makes me think about one thing that just touches like everything you've talked about there, and it's my sadness is that like the soldiers who fought for our countries to give us our freedoms here in America, that there seemed to be the biggest one that could utilize both the psychedelic aspect and the cannabis aspect as healing things, and they're shunned from that to be, if you know, most of them that could really use it for their anxiety and everything else, which mushrooms and cannabis both work very great for. Uh, they lose their rights, as you know, for medicine and everything, the help they'll get from the government. So they're prosecuted like that, and then their answer is the petro drugs that you're talking about, the pharmaceutical drugs that just gives them more damage yet. It really pisses me off because this touches on everything that you've touched on so far today. Is, you know, just that, you know, you don't know how many veterans I've tried to help with cannabis, and they've looked me dead in the eye and they've said, you know, I know this will help me, but I can't use this because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my benefits next month, or you know, in the future if they find this in my system when I go to the veterinary, you know, the vet clinics to get my medications and stuff. They find cannabis in my system, and it's going to be big trouble for me. And I just can't help but think some of the people that could utilize all of what we're talking about here are some of the people that are having the hardest time to this day. Even medical, in medical states that are there, they should be allowed to utilize. They're still afraid to step behind the cloak and you know, free themselves of the pharmaceutical mess.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, you're 100% right, and it's awful. And I've met the people you're talking about, and you know, it's just such a shame that we can send them to fight, for our freedoms, and then when they come back, they're not free to partake in something that could help them. But they can have all the pills and alcohol that they want, and then they're encouraged to do that. And I think one of the things is that is that stigma, and they've been taught that these potheads are this or that or the other, and they don't want to be that, but they don't, what they're not seeing is that that cannabis can help them. And you're even saying that some of them know that it can help and still can't do it, and that's even worse, because then it's like they want that help, and they can't get it. And I think maybe the answer is to just free yourself of the benefits in the VA and all of that, and just I mean, life is more important than those things, I think. And ultimately that's why the laws have to change, and that's one of the main reasons that I fight, to change laws against cannabis, because I don't love the way that all this legal cannabis is turning out. I don't love these corporate dispensary and this and that. I don't love the fact that like people think this is a get rich quick scheme, or it's heavily taxed, over regulated, all the negatives. But what I do love is that people aren't going to jail, and that hopefully at some point down the road, the people who need it, like the veterans you're talking about, can get it and not have to deal with the BS of losing benefits, losing their right to carry weapons, losing their right to organ transplants, so many things. And I think it's happening. You have organizations like NEVA, New England Veterans Alliance, Weed for Warriors. There's organizations out there that are helping, and there's even businesses that are hiring veterans into the cannabis industry. And I've met guys who are like, yeah, I mean, first of all these young kids that come in, they show an hour late, and they blame traffic, and the veterans are there 10 minutes before the scheduled time, because they know how to work and get a job done. And so I think it's important for us. That's why I think that the prisoners and the veterans and the seniors, I mean, those are the people that come first, the medical patients. That, I like what Russ Belville says. It's like, if you're going to make the analogy that there's a war on pot, which is their analogy, right? They are at war with us. Okay, well, let's get the wounded people off the battlefield, right? These are the wounded people they're already wounded. Let's get them off the battlefield. And to me, that's medical marijuana. Okay, get the wounded people off the battlefield, but this fight still goes on because I don't need a doctor's permission to use cannabis, and I don't need anybody. I don't need the government's permission either. I don't need a card that I carry around that says I'm allowed to use cannabis. It's a friggin' flower, and if I want to use it, I should be allowed to use it. I mean, isn't that the purpose of freedom? Is freedom over your own body? And so yeah, that's why I like Russ's way of saying, like, okay, medical is get the wounded off the battlefield, but this is still a war going on, and the veterans are a perfect analogy. These are people who've been to wars or have served, and if they don't deserve this, I don't know who does. I say anything that helps them, they should be allowed to do. You know what I mean? It's a no-brainer, and I see too many of them succumbing to alcohol, the pills, and this the trauma that they deal with, and brain injury, and all these things that they could be helped with. So it's shameful, and that's not just U.S. veterans. We're talking about veterans of any country's military. They can all benefit. People that are part of Israel's military. I mean, they don't know what to do with themselves when they get out of service. That, like I said, they go to Goa for 6 months or whatever in India just to try to forget. And I think it's just yeah, we always think of our own surroundings, but this is worldwide. This can help people all over the world, and there's places in the world where you can get a death sentence for cannabis. So let's not forget, like Indonesia, where I'd love to go and surf in Indonesia one day, but I'm scared to go to Bali or any of those places because they, if they catch you with cannabis, you can be thrown in jail for 25 years. You can get executed in Singapore. So it's just crazy, and we're talking about cannabis, a plant, a flower. It's beneficial, it's helpful. If you don't want to use it, don't use it, but don't destroy people's lives about it. It's unfathomable.
Yeah, that brings up another point. How many places have you gone to traveling around just with that fear on yourself? Like you said, man, this fight's far from over. Far from over. There's people that come on the show from red states, other countries that are still not even close. How many times in your travels to do the cups and whatnot have you went, oh, just sweat when you get off of the plane or wherever, going, I am a walking target here. They are waiting for me to fuck up.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I mean, that happens almost everywhere, to be honest. I mean, especially if you're doing a cannabis cup, because, you've advertised it, you've let people know that it's happening. And then here you are, in a place where you may or may not, be following everything perfectly. You're trying, and there's lawyers helping and all of that. But ultimately, you're pushing the envelope of what's allowed. And I can remember that, the first one we did in the US, we had no idea what the reaction was going to be from law enforcement and from local authorities or anybody else. We just did it and said, let's put on a show and see if we can duplicate Amsterdam, but in San Francisco. And it happened and it worked. But we had a number of them raided. We've been raided in Amsterdam. We've been raided in Detroit. It happens. It's the cost of the risk that you're taking. To try to change the world and change the way people see this flower. But I tend to try to avoid places where it's really bad. Like there's certain places I probably would not go based solely on their legalities for cannabis, because I'm a cannabis consumer and I'm gonna consume it. And so, if I'm in a place where you can get executed for it, I'm probably going to avoid it. But I've also ridden in the trunk of a car to visit someone's garden, just because they don't want me to know where their garden is. And, and I don't want to know whether, if they don't want me to know, I don't want to know. You know what I mean? Because God forbid something happens down the road.
That's got to be a scary freaking feeling right there when you're dealing with somebody that's like in the trunk. You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, they're
talking.
very apologetic about it. You know what I mean? I remember being like, them being like, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but my partner," and I said, "Hey, no problem. I'm fine with it. I'll ride in the trunk. You can pop it open once we're in the garage, and I have no idea where we are. That's perfect. That's fine. I'm not here to. I'm not trying to find out where this is. I don't need to know." So, and that was the experience back in the early days, because of the risk that people were taking. Now, I've been to gardens particularly in Hawaii, where you have to go through a government background check to visit the garden. I actually had an FBI background check twice, in order to visit legal, medical cannabis gardens in Hawaii. I mean, fingerprinted and everything. So again, like, that's how far things have changed. I went from riding the
That's
trunk.
got to be an odd feeling all in itself.
Yeah, it's funny because I was like a little bit disappointed that I passed in a weird way. Like, I needed to pass and I wanted to pass, but when I did pass, I was like, wait, how is the FBI not know who I am? But I guess they let bygones be bygones or whatever. One day I'd love to do the Freedom of Information Act, find out, get the whole file or whatever. But it was like there was a slight tinge of disappointment, in the same way that Hunter Thompson said that he was pissed because he didn't make Nixon's enemies list. When Nixon was in power and he was writing so much shit about him and really giving him the business. And then the list came out and he was mortified to find out he didn't make the cut.
I'm a huge Hunter fan. I just love the way that guy lived his life. He just lived it his way, man. You got to respect that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, he had a huge connection to marijuana legalization as well. I mean, he was a friend of NORML, a friend of Keith Stroup, who's the founder of NORML. He ran for sheriff of Aspen at some point on like a legalized marijuana platform. And, he definitely, I think he said that cannabis is one of the staples of life, like grapefruit and cold beer or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but he was a big fan of the halfling's leaf, and he truly understood the hypocrisy of the government's prohibition of it as well, and put it into spectacular words.
Man, what would it be like to go back and be able to hang with that guy for a day, huh?
Oh yeah. You can be prepared for anything though, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I would be too. I mean, it's just that was one cool guy, and especially to live out his dream of being, shot out across this property and there in the end, and the big old double-fisted peyote can in there.
Yeah. Johnny Depp made that one happen. That was great. That was awesome.
I'm glad you brought him up. That's
Well, he wrote for High Times too. He was a big fan of outlaws, and that's where we come from. It's people want to say criminals, but it's really outlaws. Which is a very different word. You know what I mean? And that's I think he had a soft spot for outlaws, and I think he understood outlaw culture in a way. And I think that's the one thing we need to remember, as an institutional memory of our industry, of our community, of anything that we do in the future, is that we come from the underground. And, there's different rules that apply, and different codes that you live by. And there's something to be gained from that, in the larger space of legal cannabis. And I think, that's important. And I think the companies that at the end of all of this, when it all kind of washes out, the ones that stay true to the culture are the ones that are going to be, have the longevity.
Oh, here's a good one for you. Let's see your thoughts on this one. Your thoughts. This is like a two-parter here. Your thoughts on recreation cannabis coming through and being pushed through legal state by state versus medical. And do you think that the sudden push for rec across the country could be in part secretly kind of pushed by big pharma just to to get them off, to get if Big Pharma got everybody smoking recreational weed, then it would probably pull off the heat off them as far as medical uses, and people trying to make that switch. So do you think there could be somewhat of a connection there? I mean, myself, I don't want to. I'm happy to see rec come, but I'm afraid that there will be a decline in the interest in medical because there's not the numbers from state to state going. Well, we've got 100,000, 200,000, a million people with medical cards. Research needs to be done, and as if rec comes, the numbers are obviously going to fall, 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 fall. So if those numbers fall, do you think that research at that point could slack?
Well, I don't see it as like some type of conspiracy by Big Pharma. I mean, they would love to exploit the cannabis market, but as far as rec goes, I think there's different states that are doing it differently, right? So in Washington, they had a big issue with rec basically destroying the medical marketplace, and I think that's probably the wrong way to go about it. But in Massachusetts or even Colorado, these two things live side by side. So, there's a medical, you can go to a dispensary and there's a medical side and you're paying less, right? You're paying lower, in taxes, and the price of the medicine is cheaper than it is for someone who's going in without a doctor's, card and purchasing what they call rec, but I, prefer basically just adult use, just someone wants to smoke cannabis and they want to buy a product and they don't need their doctor's note. So I'm all for it. I mean, I think that these two things can live side by side, and I think medical patients should be allowed to grow more plants than rec patients, because they should be able to produce their own medicine if they need it. But I think both things can coexist side by side, and I don't think that I personally don't think that people need to get it, talk to their doctor to use cannabis. I mean, some people need it, obviously, and I've met them and I know them, and there's millions out there who are using cannabis medically, and they shouldn't have to pay what the rec user pays. So I like that kind of side by side distinction that they have in places like Mass and Colorado, rather than what happened, like I said, in Washington, where rec kind of destroyed what they had for medical. So, but again, I'm for changing the laws much further. I mean, I'm for. I'm hoping there won't be plant limits at some point, and I'm hoping people will just be able to grow cannabis in their garden, like tomatoes or anything else. So, I'm looking at a longer picture of, complete cannabis freedom, which involves medical, it involves rec, it involves getting the government out of the situation. It involves basically taking it off of any schedule, right? Because it's their Schedule 1 and their Schedule 2 and their Schedule 3. If there's any sort of conspiracy, right, by the pharmaceutical companies, it would be to reschedule, right? So instead of Schedule 1, you go to Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, and then they've got their hooks in it, right? Because then it becomes all sublingual tablets and patches that you put on and tinctures and things, and smoking a joint is still illegal, right? That's not a Schedule 2 or a Schedule 3 kind of thing. Flowers that you put into a rolling paper and ignite, that's not, no one's ever going to put that as medicine, right? But if you take it off the schedule entirely, because look, nicotine isn't on a schedule, sugar isn't on a schedule, caffeine isn't on a schedule. These are things that are more harmful than cannabis, right? All three. And yet they're not on any sort of schedule. And nor should cannabis be on a schedule. So if it's completely off the schedule, I think, in full federal legalization, then we don't really have to worry about the distinctions between rec and medical, and everyone's just a cannabis consumer. And if you're using it as medicine, that's great. And if you're using it to enhance, going to see an animated movie, that's great too. And I think ultimately that's the goal. And if rec gets us there, then great. Along the way, obviously there's all these hiccups and places where they're learning from their mistakes and then changing things. And ideally, you're making baby steps towards that future. But again, we've come a long way. You know, I couldn't have imagined 20 years ago that I could go into a store in my hometown and buy cannabis over the counter, and with the cops outside directing traffic. You know, so I think it's important, you know, and I think, you know, I certainly don't think that, you know, we should be fighting amongst ourselves over medical versus rec or anything. I mean, the bigger picture is so much bigger, and how we get there is important, and who controls it is important. But we do have to get there one way or the other. And so I, you know, I don't see it that way. Like I said, the conspiracy would be to change it to a different schedule, and then, you know, and they're in. I mean, pharmaceutical companies are in the cannabis business. I mean, don't let's not kid ourselves. This isn't something that's going to happen in the future. Bayer owns, you know, GW Pharmaceuticals. Bayer owns, you know, I don't want to get into this too deeply, but they're here. They're in the cannabis industry, and they loved it. I mean, think about it. Here's a plant where, you know, you can get the munchies from it, right? So you can have an appetite stimulant, or you can isolate one part of it, THCV or you know, one of these cannabinoids, and you can actually curb appetite and have an appetite suppressant. Here's something that works for epilepsy, and also works for, you know, AIDS wasting syndrome, and also works for you know, cancer treatment. I mean, you know, the possibilities for them are in the many billions of dollars, and they're not idiots. They know that. So, you know, they're here. They're part of the industry. I hate to break it to anybody. And certainly it's not in their best interest for us to be growing our own flowers and smoking them out of, you know, paper and igniting them and all that. I mean, they want us to be using their products, and they're very powerful. You know, they have lots and lots and lots of money. So we're up against a lot, you know, but we're on the winning side. We're on the right side. And that's always brought me, you know, a lot of peace of mind, knowing, meeting the people who cannabis has saved their life, and knowing that ultimately, you know, we're on the right side and they're on the wrong side, and our parties are way better too.
Way better.
I hate to break it to you, but their parties suck. You know, these prohibitionist parties are just, man, super duper lame. So we're out here having fun, healing people with a healing flower, and breaking the stigma around this that has only existed, like I said, for 75 something years. So, you know, we're on the right side of history, and sometimes it takes longer to get to where you're going than you know, and we can see that with, you know, the civil rights situations, and we can see that with a lot of different situations. You know, the fight continues, but it's getting better.
In any in particular cannabis event that stuck out in your mind like a diamond, that you're like, wow, that one just, shoo, that was the one?
I mean, certainly we had a couple of cannabis cups in Denver that were just entirely out of control, with 40, 50,000 people shoulder to shoulder. You know, I think, you know, I want to say 2014, around that time. Incredible musical artists performing, and, you know, tremendous amount of booths and different people displaying all their different, you know, cannabis products and ancillary products. But wow, I mean, geez, it's so hard to think. I mean, I've been to like hundreds of these things. But I mean, I always love Seattle Hemp Fest. I've really enjoyed the hash batches and Boston Freedom Rally. Anytime it's like open to the public, you know, you don't have to pay for a ticket. To me, that really brings out everybody. And, you know, they're all there to celebrate how far we've come, and to protest, you know, that we still have a ways to go. I like what Vivian McPeak from Seattle Hemp Fest calls it, a protestable. So it's a festival, but a protest at the same time. And, you know, there's just so many, it's hard to say. I mean, there's all those cannabis cups in Amsterdam, and there's Spanibus, and you know, just, so I've gotten, it's the privilege of my life to have been able to go to all these events and meet, you know, the performers and the people behind the events. And, you know, I got to go to a bunch of Bonnaroos, which was amazing. You know, anytime many of these musical artists come to New York, typically High Times has an invite and a backstage pass. So I've gotten to meet so many of the musicians that I admire and comedians, and we all share this wonderful thing in common. And we're all such good people. I mean, that's the other thing you learn when you meet, lifelong cannabis people, is that they're, some of them are more quirky than others, obviously. But everybody's like got a good heart and soul. I mean, for the most part, of course, there's duds in every group, but for the most part, people's hearts are in the right place, and they're fun people. They're great to hang out with, and they're open-minded, and they don't, they're not like the type that litter, or what I mean. Like, I don't know, they just take a little extra special care in their surroundings and who they surround themselves with. And again, like, if it's the one thing that stuck with me from Jack as well was, he said that if you replace nicotine, alcohol, pharmaceutical drugs, opiates, and even sugar in your life with cannabis, you will live at least an extra decade. And it really stuck with me when he said that, because I was like, in my 20s, kind of burning the candle on both ends. And I thought, that's hard to dispute. Like, that's the truth. You look at anybody who does any of those things to tremendous excess, and it has a really debilitating effect on them physically, mentally, and as people. And I find that, I meet old cannabis heads, old timers, and they're like young men, in their mind, in their body. They're younger people. And I think it's hard for me not to see cannabis as playing a role in that. And like, I mean, look at Tommy John. He's 82 years old. I mean, the guy works out, and like, he's right there. Like, he has not diminished in his humor and his spirit and who he is. I mean, look at Willie Nelson. He's even older than Tommy, and he's performing, he's enjoying his time in Hawaii. And he said if he kept drinking whiskey, he'd be dead, 100%. He was like, there's no way, he felt it. And, and he also said that cannabis helps him suppress his rage, because even though he's such a mellow, chill guy, he's got stuff that he's mad about. And like, just that alone, is just so, I think, special and important. And and those are two famous guys, right? But I meet a lot of non-famous people too, and it's the same. They're just, I hate to say they seem like better people, but they do. And cannabis played a role in making them a better person. It's hard to argue against that, even though it sounds so crazy when you say it. And so I think it makes you more compassionate and more understanding of other people's situations. And I don't know, there's something to be said for these plants and fungi and substances that's far more than just, hey, let's party. And I'm not against a good party, so there's nothing wrong with partying, but like, there's more to learn as well.
You said at one point there that you talked about the binding power of cannabis. It's funny because there is a lot to be said about that. I mean, not necessarily at the cannabis events per se, but I mean, in real life, how many times have you ran across a butthead in your life that you're not really, he's not your favorite guy, but you'll still smoke that joint with him?
Right. Yeah. No, it definitely, it bridges the divide. That's definitely something that it does. That's what I'm going to miss too, is like the social aspect of passing, joining around a circle. I think, I feel like at least for a long time, that's not going to happen unless we come up with a sterile way of doing that. And it's sad because, that communal aspect and that social aspect of sharing cannabis is important. And maybe we'll find a new way. I mean, I think the Jamaicans have an interesting thing that they do. They just roll a joint for everyone in the room, and you just smoke your own joint. And And then it's,
It's cool, but it's still different.
it's different.
There's
It's
just
different.
something about that act of passing it, like
Yeah.
like it's an offering. You know what I mean? A
Yeah.
friendship.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I think that's one of the reasons I always like joints as like a medium. People ask me what's your favorite way to consume. And I was never a big like bong pipe guy. I mean, I like rolling up a joint. I like the ritual of it and I like the sharing of it. I like putting it out and saving half of it for later sometimes if it's just me, and I like just sprinkling some hash inside of it sometimes.
I like to admire it when it's a good one. When you
Yeah.
got that one smoke that you're just like, wow. You sit there almost after every hit, you like just like stare at that joint in between hits, like, wow.
It's a great way for me to judge the cannabis too. I mean, because if it burns to a nice clean white ash and it stays lit and it tastes good even halfway down the joint, then I know that it was grown with care. And if it burns like a piece of charcoal and you have to keep relighting it and keeps running or doing funny things, that it was probably not grown with care and overfed or something went wrong along the way there somehow, whether it was during the growing or during the drying and curing, but something went wrong. And sometimes I can't tell that from just snapping a bong hit or just a hit off a bowl. I really need to see the burn of the joint to judge it. And that's how I've judged all the cannabis cups that I've judged for the most part. Yeah, so it's something I'm going to miss for sure, that communal sharing aspect.
Yeah, I know it's good when a couple hits in on that joint, and you can see that paper almost going like translucent. You
That
can just see
the ring of oil that like forms at the end of it too sometimes,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. You know you're in for a good one when it checks all the boxes right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a grower, I think, it's a little more wasteful when you're buying an eighth for $60, but if you're growing, it's like, why not roll a joint? I don't know. To me, it was always my preferred thing, and still actually really is, to be honest. I mean, I'm hitting the dabs here with the pen, but I could just as easily, just sprinkle some of that into the middle of a joint and roll that up and smoke it. And, you know, I don't know. I like the feeling. I like to kind of just sip on it too. I'm not a big, huge dope, like who could do a gram dab? And, I mean, I watch those things on YouTube and I'm amazed by them and all that, but I can't be that guy. I mean, I'd be coughing for the next 40 minutes.
It's like
I like to sip it, but a lot of it over time. That's my consumption preference.
one of the gentlemen that's here in chat, the American one, was quick to point out the other night when we were talking about the big 1 gram dabs areas. Most of that ends up in the neck. You know what I mean? They're not even smoking that whole gram. They're just like taking some of it and then, well, 3/4 of that gram is, as reclaimed. You know what I mean? They haven't really even burned it all off. They just wasted it in a hot dab. It's just, if you got it, I guess it just seems more wasteful than anything, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the one person at the party, that breaks out the big ounce joint or the huge dab. It's fun. I mean, I think it's great for like social media and stuff like that too. I don't, I might sound like super, political and everything else, but I love to party with cannabis. I love to smoke it. I wake and bake, and like I enjoy it, and I enjoy the events that we do. Smoking with all the different people and tasting what they grew, and um, it's about having fun. That's another thing that Dr. Lester Grinscomb talks about is, of course, there's the medical aspects. I mean, he wrote, the Forbidden Medicine, Cannabis, the Forbidden Medicine. But there's also just the enhancement of things, right? So just binging a show on Netflix is better when you're high. Love making can sometimes be better when you're high. Taking a walk in the park, can be better when you're high. It enhances those experiences. And if it doesn't enhance them for you, then don't use it. But I mean, it's crazy that, you know, you would think that we belong in jail for enhancing our lives with cannabis. It's outrageous. And, you know, it's also racist. You know, I mean, this whole thing was born out of like hatred for Mexican and Black people. And so, you know, it falls along all the lines of things that are an outrage. You know, here in New York, 90% of the people arrested for cannabis are Black and Latino. 90%, but they only make up, you know, 30 or 40% of the population. So that shows you that there's something wrong. You know, certain people are being policed and certain people aren't, you know, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the people that's, you know, not as heavily policed on that situation, but hey, they don't, if they want to, if they catch you smoking, they don't care. You know, it's just certain neighborhoods that they're patrolling. And so, you know, the whole thing is, you know, it's an outrage, but we should still have fun. We should still celebrate and we should still enjoy it because that's what it does. It helps us to enjoy things and appreciate them. And, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, we only have one life to live and we should be allowed to enjoy it.
How do you feel about, I guess you kind of touched on it right there. I never realized uh, going forth how important it was to, you know, start correcting some of the wrongs from the past that we, you know, has been done before us. And that one right there, the whole, you know, marijuana laws there in the word marijuana. Uh, Father Mike, who's a, you know, you've heard of Father Mike, I'm sure, from the YouTube community and everything. He's been on here, and he was quick to point out that that's one of them words that we should maybe uh, try to get away from. Just stick to the, you know, the original word of cannabis. I mean, just by using the word marijuana, we're still inflicting the fight. You know what I mean? We're pointing out that there's something bad or was, you know, at one time something associated with the plant being bad. So it's almost like calling it a four-letter word anymore. I think that he was right. We should be just sticking to cannabis, the word cannabis, and try to steer away from like terms like marijuana. What do you think? How do you feel on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this argument before, and I understand where it comes from. But as a writer and someone who writes about cannabis and marijuana and weed and all the different names that we have for it, I can appreciate there being, you know, multiple different ways to refer to it rather than just always saying cannabis. And I think, you know, if you look at Google searches and what people will call it, you know, typically, you know, marijuana is probably number one, then weed, and then cannabis. And I think that's changing over time because more and more people are using cannabis. Like, look, my first book is, you know, marijuana strains, marijuana is big, and then, you know, the second one, it's cannabis, but it's still a guide to growing marijuana because it's just a more recognizable word. And I don't consider, you know, it has Mexican origin, but I don't consider that to make it a racist word. It's just another term for marijuana. I don't think ganja, you know, is a racist word. I just think there's these different terms for it. I don't particularly like the word dope that a lot of the old timers use, but only because in my mind it's associated with a completely different drug. Uh, but I do know, you know, there's old timers that just say, "Oh, we're going to smoke some dope," and it's, you know, it's colloquial for them for when they, you know, were young. Uh, that's the one to me that I don't like is dope. Everything else I don't mind: grass, weed, ganja, you know, hippie lettuce. the, as a writer, you know, you can appreciate having different ways to refer to the thing. And then, you know, just in terms of people, you know, reading the word and knowing what you're talking about as well. But yeah, I agree that, you know, I try to use cannabis as often as possible because that's really the, you know, the technical term for it. And that's the best word we've got for it. But I don't use it exclusively.
I just think that it's funny that, you know, so many things that they've said over the years about the plant it's just incredibly wrong, incredibly wrong. You know, some of the stuff productivity, one. Every smoker I know is amongst some of the most productive people I know. They're out there, how many there's if people really knew, the wake and bake and safety meetings probably before what is being built in everybody's day, they wouldn't be like, holy cow, they aren't lazy, you know what I mean? Shit's being done on marijuana or cannabis for sure. Uh, I just wish that we could break free from just race it all and just to start anew on it all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And, we can look to alcohol prohibition and the end of that as well, because that didn't happen overnight either. I mean, New York, I think, was one of the first states to basically say, we're not going to use state resources to help the feds anymore. And then little by little, just every other state jumped in and that was it. But there's still, dry counties to this day, right? There's places that just never came around to the law. I think ultimately, we're going to be looking at a similar landscape where, if you want to party with the prohibitionists, there's going to be that county where they may not have a dispensary or a social use type situation going on. But for the majority of people who, value their freedom and the freedom of choice of what they want to do with their own body, I think they're gonna have access to cannabis, and I'm hoping that it'll be high quality cannabis, and you know all the different ways that it can be done. But I want to place an emphasis personally for me on the mom and pops, the small producers, the local producers, the co-op organizations that are like food co-ops, the farmers markets, the people who deserve it, and then take a little bit, everybody has a place at the table. I'm not there, there's nothing wrong with people making money, but I don't think I want to buy my cannabis from Monsanto or Marlboro or, Bayer. So, we all have our choices to make, and we vote with our pocketbooks, and my pocketbook is going to vote for the locally grown, sun-grown, organic cannabis from the farmers that I know and I love, and I that make the best product.
I'm gonna I don't know. I believe I'm gonna let you off on this one. Because there's most definitely another name that you could have thrown on there along with the Monsantos, the Bear, and there's another giant staple in the industry willing to throw their name into the recreational market, from what I heard. But I'll leave you alone on your opinion on the emergence of that big name entering the so-called cannabis field.
Yeah, I mean, I want to support the products that I love and the people that I love, and I think, like I said, you can there's room for everyone on the playground, but I know who I want to play with, and we're gonna be over here playing, and you guys can be over there doing whatever you're doing. but I'm hopeful for the future. I don't see it as this like crazy corporate takeover or this crazy pharmaceutical. Sure, they're here, they're coming, they're part of it, and they're gonna do their thing, and at the end of the day, we're gonna do our thing, and we are the authentic underground outlaws, and we're gonna support underground authentic outlaws, or at least I am, and I hope everyone who cares about it will too. And that doesn't mean I won't buy cannabis at a dispensary. That doesn't mean I won't,
it's just
grow
painful
my
when you have to
own.
get it from there. It's just painful when you have to get it from a dispensary. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, like, if that's your only source, and then more power to you, and that's fine. But I'm probably going to seek out the highest quality product I can get for the best price that comes from someone who cared about growing it.
I would hope that by this point, you should not have to do that. I should hope. I should hope by this point, amongst all your travels, you should have some be able a nice little book of people you can call in your travels that would keep you out of any kind of store other than, just to go in and say hello. You
Yeah, I
shouldn't be
mean,
having to storm in and trying to buy anything. I wouldn't think
it's
anyway.
it's honestly it's why it's one of the reasons I called my show Free Weed, my original podcast, is because I think it should be free, practically free. I mean, I think, like I said, the cost of it primarily is in the risk of what might happen to you because you have it in your possession. But that's not a cost in a legal framework. So free weed means, if your friend's growing, tomatoes and cucumbers and you're growing cannabis, you trade them some cannabis for their tomatoes and cucumbers. And, it's kind of like that kind of thing, like a barter system situation in my mind, because it shouldn't be $300 an ounce. It's crazy. It's insane. And if that's the price at the dispensary, people should know that they can produce it themselves for much cheaper, And if they know that, then why would they buy it from the dispensary? I mean, sure, it's convenient, but it's also fun to grow your own. It's rewarding, and it's cheap, way cheaper. And everything that went into it. The strain that you're growing. The nutrients that were used. Whether there was pesticides applied, and you put your love into it, and it's giving you your love right back to you. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's like buy it at a store or create it out of thin air. To me, it's like, why would I buy it at a store at that point when the stuff I create out of thin air is better and cheaper and cleaner and makes me feel amazing. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I realize not everybody's going to grow their own, but certainly you should have friends that grow their own and care about it like that. And maybe you can do something to provide them with something that they need. And that way it's free. It's something that you just share out of your garden, out of, an abundance. I mean, it is technically pretty much free to grow. So yeah, I mean, that's why, and it also, of course, free weed is like a statement to say, like, let's free the weed, so I love the double entendre, and I loved being able to say, like, oh, well, it's not actually free weed. You have to actually learn to grow it, and there's more to it than that. But I felt like it was a great way to draw people in. Free weed, who doesn't want that?
Right out.
But that was the reason. And everybody's always asking me, how do I get into the cannabis industry? How do I get into the cannabis industry? I'm telling them, get out of the cannabis industry. What do you want to be in the cannabis industry for? Just grow your own, and you don't have to deal with any industry. And you don't have to worry about any corporate takeover or any conglomeration or pharmaceutical company or anything else. You just self-sufficient and sustainable, and it's fun, and it feels better. So why not?
Just hope you don't mind. I want to give a shout out to my oldest daughter, Brittany, and Lexi there in chat. Brittany has actually worked with you
Wow.
in Michigan. I had a few cups here. She's been one of the the helpers that help make things happen there at the
Cool.
file, and she was in Detroit there as well. But
Awesome.
she's had the nice opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you, and thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate it, man. Those are some of my favorite cups, is those Clio cups on the raceway there, the auto speedway. Really amazing. And I try to tell people outside of Michigan, like, oh, you guys got to go to Michigan. They're like, really? They don't know sometimes. Like, I'm like, it's off the hook. I mean, people are growing, people are creating amazing concentrates, extracts, edibles. It's an amazing scene, and I love the pride that people take in the products that they produce. It really is. It's exactly what I think of when I talk about, the mom and pops and the farmers markets, and that's to me the type of system that is most beneficial to the greatest amount of us.
So, how many times have you been in? It has to be a lot. where you've come rolling into town, and it was like the bad boy circus almost. Because I was lucky enough to be able to hang out a little bit in Detroit this last Detroit Cup at the little after party there or whatever at the hotel, and I was really enjoying it. It was like an upscale hotel, and you could tell that a lot of the guests that were coming in, regular guests, were kind of looking around like, what the hell's going on? And then you could hear like the servants, oh, High Times is here tonight, and they just didn't know how to handle it. And there was at one point where we kind of went out from the bar area and we were smoking in front of the hotel there, and both people coming in, the staff, none of them actually knew how to handle it. I think the maitre d' there that was expecting the cops to roll up at any point. It was. Do you get that a lot in your travels, that people just don't know how to handle the frequent use and
Yeah,
good
yeah, we do.
times?
Yeah, it happens pretty frequently. What we try to do is, let them know, hopefully at least a little bit in advance. And we've had hotels that have complied and created areas in the parking lot for us with tents and stuff, and they bring drinks and food out there. Because we try to tell them like it's almost impossible to contain. People are just going to be um, consuming, and we don't want them to, especially if there's families in the hotel and stuff. We want to be respectful of people. I don't want, I don't, well, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I don't like to, I have a family of my own. I don't want to disrupt someone's, vacation or trip to the hotel. So we want to be respectful and, find a place to consume cannabis. But it does sometimes get a little out of hand. And sometimes if we sort of take over the whole hotel, it gets to the point where, it becomes a kind of a free for all. And some of those hotel after parties are sometimes some of my most memorable Cannabis Cup experiences. And they sometimes literally they happen in like the parking lot in the back of a hotel on the side of the road. But that's when the staff and the crew that puts it all together all sort of unwind, because we're working all day. I mean, I'm running around smoking cannabis with people, so it's not really work. But there's people that are working, right? There's the people who are building the booths and putting everything up and taking everything down, and organizing everything and riding around on carts and making sure. It's a tremendous amount of work that goes into it, and the crew is amazing. And then, our staff of people who are doing seminars and panels. And so, there's a lot going on to make these things happen. And then after they're done, that's when we want to unwind and have some fun. So some of those hotel parking lot parties are very memorable and lots of fun. And also, like you said, kind of almost like, it's the after party. It's like the few people that made it through the day and are still standing after all the dabs and joints and everything. That's fun.
There's something to be said about that too. There could be some long days at them cups in the sun there.
Oh yeah, and the ones in the U.S. typically we just do over a weekend, but the ones in Amsterdam they were typically 5 days, 4 nights. So that's
really?
That's like a marathon. You got stuff to do all day, and then you got concerts all night, and you're in a foreign country. Just getting there takes 10 hours, and then it's a completely different time zone, and you hit the ground running. You just got to work and get your stuff done and have fun, and but it's a marathon and not a sprint. You got to really pace yourself on those type of events. I teach anyone that comes in and it's their first cup and they're working, I sit them down and tell them, listen, you're going to want to go hard, but just pace yourself, because it's an all day, all night thing. And, you want to be there at the end of it. We've had people take edibles and just lose a whole day of the cup, like they just go missing in action.
I've had that. I've been there, and I've had a nephew actually have that happen too, man. I gave him a cookie, and he's like, I didn't even think nothing about it. And he's just like, I'm like, you ever ate any edibles before? And he's like, nope, this is the first one. I'm like, oh I seen him about an hour later, and he was just feeling it. He was having a good time. He toughed it out. Love them cups.
Yeah, I
Always
mean, and
will.
that's one of the amazing things about cannabis is that, I mean, like even a cannabis overdose, typically it's just a nap. You know, you just need some time and then you're fine. Like, you know, it's not life and death. It's not, you know, there's no hangover. There's no, you know, it's not, you know, I mean, I see these kids with the opiates, and I mean, you know, the tiniest little amount of these things, and then they die, and it's scary even to think of, like, you know, a whole generation that's just, you know, teetering on the brink of overdose all the time, you know, and you see it happen. It's just, it's awful. It's the worst when kids, you know, you're losing kids to, you know, something that's just you know, a bad decision and at a bad moment. And you don't, that doesn't happen with cannabis. You know, we'll replace that stuff with cannabis. And, you know, the worst thing is you take a nap, you know, and but you wake up the next day. You wake up, you know, and you're fine, and you can do it again. You know, all these things, these people with their sleeping pills and all the, you know, self-help books that try to teach you how to be in the moment and all these things. It's just, you know, smoke cannabis. It'll bring you right there. It'll help you sleep. It'll help you work. It'll help you with everything.
Aches and pains.
I'm the can evangelist.
It's so easy to do, though. I mean,
I know, I
there's
feel
no.
crazy sometimes. You know, you say things that, you know, people think are crazy. You know, particularly people outside of our community. You tell them that you've met people whose lives have been saved by cannabis. They think you're nuts, and yet I've met thousands. You know, so it's hard not to feel like, you know, strangling them, to just say, like, look, I'm literally telling you that I've met these people, but they're, you know, they're mired in propaganda, and they just don't believe the hype. You know, they believe the hype. They don't believe the truth.
I do, and you know, again, I've reverted back to this a few times, but I really believe that a lot of the medicinal values of this plant is just being around it and cultivating it. And that's no word of a lie. You don't know how many I use. I'm sure you do. I take that back. I'm talking to the guy that fucking was part of High Times for 20 months. Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm sure you do. All the growers that I talk to, you know, we talk about the medicinal effects and whatnot, but it always boils down to, and including myself, we could have some of the worst days in the world, and you know, it comes time to walk into your garden and take your work with your plants, and it's like, you know, the plant's known from like uptaking bad things out of the soil and, you know, making it new. I think it does it from us, Danny. I really do. I think these plants absorb our negative energy as we go in there, because every grower I know instantly loses themselves in that garden, in that place, within minutes. It doesn't take long to just walk into that room, look at them plants, run them through your fingers, you know, especially once you start working in there, start looking through the leaves, snapping them off, just taking in how they're feeling. You've lost all the negativity and, you know, stress from the day. The garden has automatically just sucked it right up, and you don't even have to be smoking or utilizing the plant at that, you know, point. It's already working on you before, you know. Then even better, once you know you've spent a little time in there and you take a break and you almost sadly cannibalize the plant right in front of it. But it don't say nothing. It don't say nothing. It knows that's what it's for. And but it just
Yeah.
keeps on going from the time it sprouts that seed to the time you work it to the time you pass it to, you know, when you're helping your patients with it, you're helping yourself with it. There's so many, I mean, so many things that can be done with it once it pops out of that earth, you know. I mean, industrial aspects, medical benefits, and then, like I said, talking about it, being around other people, you know, you know, being with other people and talking about it has its, you know, effects, therapeutical effects
Yeah.
in itself. It's really endless, the giving power of this plant, and like, nothing else like it. There really isn't.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's truly therapeutic, and like another phenomenon is the more of it that you give away, the more of it that comes back to you in a weird way. I noticed this with the Oregon Medical Cannabis Cafe, world famous cafe that my friend Madeline Martinez used to run in Oregon. And it was basically run on donations of cannabis. So basically, it was a group of people that would be hanging out, and a grower would come in and they'd ring the bell, and the grower, because the grower had donated, a quarter pound of their harvest to the cafe. And she'd start the day with, a quarter pound or a pound of cannabis, and she'd end the day with people smoking all day, by the way, all day, pool table, having fun, comedy shows, wonderful, amazing place to hang out. At the end of the day, she's got 3 pounds. I'm like, how did this happen? She says, people love this place and they love to donate. And they come here and they give their cannabis because they want to see people enjoying it and they want to be part of it. And so, I don't know. I thought that was like a brilliant thing. Is you just wouldn't even see how it all happened. You just hear the bell ringing a couple times, ding, 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 ding. And then by the end, she had more than what she started the day with. I thought it was beautiful and brilliant. And to me, that's a higher concept than making it rich in the cannabis biz, like as if it was just like cell phones or widgets or something. This is the thing that we love. This is the thing that we cherish and we dedicate our lives to, and we celebrate, and we want it, we want the quality of it to reflect, us. And so, like you said, it's therapeutic to create it. And, that's been my mission, for years, and will continue to be my mission, is to convince people to take the plunge, dive in and grow their own.
Where have been some of your favorite cannabis views? I mean, you've traveled all over. Have you been able to stand? I'm sure you've been able to stand on more than one mountain or hillside and be able to look down at amazing
Oh yeah.
cannabis fields. Which stand in mind?
Well, I mean, originally I think Vancouver Island was the first place that really blew my mind, uh, because I went around with a few different growers and breeders on a few different trips to the island early on, in the early 2000s. Uh, and back here in New York, we considered a 16 light garden was a huge garden. I mean, that was massive. Uh, but that was the first time that I would started seeing industrial sized gardens that were still 100% illegal. I mean, this was like still the underground, but there was 100 lights, just grows. There was huge outdoor grows, guerrilla grows that people were doing, and it felt like everyone on the island was a part of it. You know what I mean? Like everyone you met was in the business. There was grow stores everywhere. Everyone, it felt like that was just a major part of the region. And I think Northern California also in the same way, but the gardens were smaller at the time. It was still very much, hidden in NorCal, where it almost felt like in Vancouver Island in British Columbia, that it was just an open secret. Like, it felt like even the cops were in on it in a way, because it was just such a major part of the culture and the economy, you know. So that was pretty mind blowing. But then since then, I mean, I've gotten to see, a huge, almost 1 million square foot Canadian facility in Edmonton a couple of years ago, uh, with robots basically growing all the plants. We're talking about 875,000 square foot grow facility attached to the airport. That we took a helicopter over to see the size of it. That's how big it was. And then some of the greatest gardens I've seen have just been like what's behind you in the picture, a tent and a few lights and some beautiful hand-fed plants of the highest quality. And so much goes down to pheno hunting and finding the actual strain you want to grow, and the version of the strain that you want to continue to grow over and over, if that's your thing. And so there's a lot to growing aside from just growing plants. And a lot of it has to do with being able to select, which plants to keep growing in the future. And so it's like a never ending thing that, that you just keep learning from and improving upon.
Yeah, I agree. Just was checking out chat here. I caught your name here. Right last one, talking about the hash bash.
Yeah, great event.
Yeah,
And that's been going for, almost 50 years now, which is just, phenomenal.
I was
Michigan has such a rich history of cannabis law reform, hash bash being a major part of it, and the laws changing in Ann Arbor on the campus there. John Sinclair, such a legend from Michigan. I don't know, there's a lot of amazing people working really hard to help with cannabis in Michigan. And shout out to all them. Chuck Green, Rick Thompson.
I was glad to see that even though this bad time that we couldn't have the event, that they still at least made the information available digitally, in that format.
Yeah, I got to participate in that one as well, which was fun, but certainly not the same as being on the Diag or going to the fair. That's a uniquely, Ann Arbor type experience that I got to have a couple times, and it's just it's due to the people who are willing to put their neck on the line and do the work, and Adam Brook and Jamie Lowell and so many people involved in Michigan legalization movement. But we're all working together for the same thing, and I think it's sometimes we lose sight of that, and it's easy to find our faults and differences in each other too, and I don't know. I think cannabis is something that brings people together, like I said, and I don't think it should be something we fight about or any kind of partisan issue.
So how's this been so far? I know I got a couple questions for you. First of all, I guess I want to know your take on the as a somebody that's in the business and in my opinion well up there, very respectable, you know what I mean. When I approached you, I definitely tried to watch, be as respectful as I could, but I was. How is the name? How is the title of the show? Uh, is it off-putting for somebody on your side? I mean, did you look
Title
at
of
it
your
and
show?
go, yeah, did you was it something like, oh, I don't want no part of that? Because there's been times I've wondered if there's been not necessarily not from you but other folks, when I've set out that invitation and there's been like, okay, a little bit of banner there, and then I kind of like throw that link to, and it's got the whole fucking talking shit with Eagle on it. I've noticed in a couple instances communication has slowed there. Is it that bad of a title or
yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, you know what I mean? Like I to me it's just funny. It's a funny title, but I also try not to judge on the basis of things like that. Like I said, I've met all these people in all these different places, and sometimes you meet people who you might think are for lack of a better term, like in the outlaw community, there are people who look like they might want to do you harm. They're real true outlaws, but if you treat them with respect, and you come to find out that they're actually good people and they're not looking to do anyone harm. They're just on the tougher side of things and have been through things that they had to survive. And so I try not to judge, basically. I mean, I swear, I try not to swear, around my kid and stuff like that. But I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I mean, maybe
Well,
on from a larger scale, like if you were looking for advertisers or something like that, I don't know. But if it's just to talk to people, then I think it's funny. I think it's,
I'm glad
I
because
mean,
I'm always those as a show at first it was something that I threw it out there that I kind of meant it to be like a little I wanted to catch the ear a little bit, kind of like the free like you've done with the free weed. uh
yeah. And
and
and my new one is grow bud yourself, which basically is like go fuck yourself. I mean, in a way, right? I mean, that's the way I try to pronounce it. You know, like go bud yourself. You know, so again, that's, it's skirting the line there a little bit, but I did kind of mean it in that Brooklyn, kind of way. Go bud yourself.
and that's the same thing too. Like with this, I was like, because that's what like when guys, gals, whatever, get together, and they, their significant other, whatever. Where you been all day? I've been fucking talking shit, with, you know what I mean. And to
Right.
me, it's just like an old school uh, slang term for just a casual conversation to let your guard down and talk like you would, two friends. So that's the
Yeah.
other thought behind the title there. But sometimes as the shows went on, and I've reached out to, like I said, more and more respectable people, I've second guessed myself on the title a little bit. So
I like it. I mean, like you said, it's colloquial. It's like how we are, and that's one of the things, we don't talk about as much, especially about the old days underground as a grower, is how isolated you become because you can't really talk to anybody about what you do, and all you want to do is brag about what you're doing, show people what you're growing, but it's not in your best interest to do that, and so you start to live a more isolated life, and I can remember just staying home and not going out because what's going to happen to these plants if I just decide to go out to the bar or whatever it might be. And also like, it's New York. The first thing anyone asks you when they meet you is, what do you do? And so the first thing you're telling people is a lie. And so it becomes very reclusive lifestyle and you don't want to talk to people and you want to avoid people. And I think that has a lasting traumatic effect on people as well, and it makes you feel very isolated, as a cultivator in the underground. And it's one of the beautiful things about the laws changing and things being more open is that we can talk about it and we can brag about it and we can share information and we can share, genetic material cuttings. And I don't know, it's just, I think it's so important. I think, you know, the internet played such a major role in legalization. I mean, of course, High Times, of course, all the publications and on the events and everything else, but the sharing of information really made it hard for the spread of the bullshit of prohibitionist propaganda. People just figured it out, and they had the information in front of them that showed that that was all you know a lie. And not only that, but they could contact people. I remember overgrow.com and all these websites back in the day with chat rooms, and you'd actually make a friend online, and then that could lead to real life interaction and the sharing of information and clones and cuttings and strains that that those type of things reverberate into history. They reverberate in much bigger than we actually realize, because you know that changed the quality of cannabis for this town, or changed someone's life in some kind of way. And it's important, it's important to share the information. It's important for people to watch shows like this and learn about cannabis and about our passion for cannabis.
and that's that was the premise behind it all when I started this. All of us, we sit here, we go on these shows, we talk cannabis seriously, one on one, but we need, very few times do you hear what initially started it. The passion behind it. Their laid back side, and I found that people are really enjoying listening to the build up to where they are today. It makes them more relatable, more approachable. And you talk about the community. Some of us were pushed in to be introverts almost, and it's just sad that we should be ashamed that we've all found something that makes us feel good. You know what I mean? That we've been villainized. That it's not supposed to be right. You shouldn't be doing that. When we all know good and damn well this has been one of the things that's helped us through the years. And then finally, with the social media, we've kind of been able to reach out and communicate somewhat with a bit of a cloak without, staying behind that safe door or, emoji or, whatever, that profile picture, and still be able to communicate. What I've also found on that is we're also, we're wanting to step out of that. You know what I mean? We've wanted, and that's what the show has kind of done too, is all these people in chat, a lot of them right next to you, last night, Miss D's Nugs. She was on here telling us about her cannabis experience. She's, and introducing herself to the community. And I think it's great that, us little guys can be on right next to, these people that we've respected all these years. It makes them feel, it makes me feel special that we can be all in the same lineup, same sentence. You know what I mean? It, it it's nice, and not only that is, it's awesome now to see like Miss These Nugs. I'm looking at her picture because she's floating through chat. It was so nice yesterday, Danny, to right where you were yesterday. She had that cartoon. If you can see her in chat, she's got that like cartoon emoji. That came on her box first. You know what I mean? We've communicated with her in chat, communicated in chat. And then I seen her little emoji pop up in your box there. And then it went from cartoon to real life person. And it was like, it's so cool to put a face and a voice with the words being typed across the screen. And it's brought the community, at least as far as I can tell, a shitload closer, because a lot of these people tune in uh, and don't quit. Some of these shows have went on for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of these people tune in for hours and hours and hours. I mean, they click and go the whole gauntlet. And and it's not nothing because of what I'm doing. It's because they've met each other, and this is just their hour. There's been times where I've been on like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Went down a serious rabbit hole. We're not even talking about cannabis anymore. And I look over at the chat, and the chat's just, they're totally on another subject, bonding with each other. And I think it's just, that, they like to come, and this is just a place for them to hang out and communicate with each other. And
It's a
an awesome
community,
thing.
right? It's a cannabis community. And that's what we lacked in the past. We had to hide in the underground. And it is nice to, be able to come out of the shadows and into the light. That's the slogan for Harborside Dispensary, Steve D'Angelo in Oakland in the Bay Area. It's out of the shadows into the light. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason we should hide. There's no reason we should be ashamed of ourselves or allow this false stigma to stick to us. It's false. It's not who we are. We're not losers. We're not dirtbags. We're not degenerates. We're cannabis consumers, and we want to be treated like customers and not like criminals. That's the thought that I had. To take it back to Amsterdam, that first trip, I do remember sitting in a coffee shop, ordering a cannabis from a menu, sitting down and rolling up a joint, having a cup of coffee, and smoking a joint, and watching the bikes go by outside, and just thinking, like, how civilized is this? What's wrong with this? This is the way it should be, and this is the way it should be back home and everywhere. And there's no reason why it shouldn't. Literally, there's nothing wrong. And all the cannabis events I've been to, there's never been hardly any act of violence. I mean, never anything bad. The occasional, vendor dispute with another vendor or something usually gets handled and without any kind of violence. And the amount of security that you have to hire where you have a beer festival, where or something, it's crazy. People are fighting and bumping into each other. I mean, you bump into someone at the cannabis cup, it's, excuse me, pardon me, no, go ahead, no, you go ahead. It's like, you don't even know the person, but you just, you're chill and you're mellow and you're just enjoying, the cannabis and the day and the people. And I think the more, that the regular world sees us for who we are, the quicker the house of cards that is cannabis prohibition will fall to the ground. The last few cards that are standing, to be honest. I mean, at this point, like I said, it's hard to find people against it, at least in most places. And then obviously, different places are in different stages of changing, but we're all changing for the better, I believe, at this point. I can think of a few examples, maybe exceptions to that rule, but I think cannabis laws and policies are changing for the better worldwide, and will continue to do so as the rest of the world sees us for who we are, which is regular people just like them.
Right on. And even with that being said, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and showing that showing this community that it just exactly that. You're just as cool as everybody else out there, and this is everything that if you put a little heart into it, it can be achievable. You know what I'm saying? That just takes love for the plant, and the passion, and the belief in it. And you never know where this thing's gonna take you.
Yeah. I mean, I never could have predicted any of this. There was no plan. I mean, I wanted to get my foot in the door. I wanted to work for High Times, but I didn't have some grand plan for my future. I just wanted to, celebrate the plant, teach people about it, and I had a deadline every month, and I, turned in an article, and I traveled and did what I had to do to be in the lane that I wanted to be in, and over a period of time, I guess that became a legacy or a something that I leave behind. And I think everybody has their role to play in the world, and that if that's mine, then I'm proud of it. And like I said, aside from family and my friends, cannabis is the next most important thing to me in life. And so I I'm happy that it gives back what I've put in and then some. I mean, way more than I've actually put in, because again, there was no plan. This was all just, I want to work for this company because I believe in the cause, and I believe in the subject matter. And I think, they're well poised to, to teach people more about it and to normalize it and to change the stigma and change the laws. And, then I have an opportunity to write a couple of books and have a show, and all of it has been in service to the plant. And so for the plant to give back what it's given me is way more than anything that I've given to it. And I just, I don't know. It's a privilege to, I'm so glad that it came into my life when it did, because again, there were naysayers, including my parents, you know what I mean? Including many people I respected, who told me, you're going down the wrong path. You're going to destroy your career. There's no future in this. It will never be legal. There was any number of people in my life and outside of my life that would lead you to believe that. But if you're really truly passionate about something, you got to fight for it, and you got to make the change. And I'm just lucky that there was a lot of other people who agreed with me, because I couldn't have done anything without, thousands and thousands of other people fighting and doing the same or more, before me and after, and so there's a lot of people who fought for it. And but it's not about people, it's about the plant, and we are in service to the plant. So I'm not trying to deflect, praise, or I truly appreciate it, and it's amazing. It's awesome. I always say legends never die. When friends of mine pass who've had a lasting impact on the world or on my life, I said legends never die. So to even be considered a peer of people I consider legends, like the people that fought and died for the cannabis plant and stuff. It's a legacy that I'm proud of. So even if it all ended today, that's something I'd be tremendously proud of. Again, aside from family and friends, it's everything. I love skateboarding and music, and I love a lot of different things in life, and that I enjoy. But cannabis is up there with near the top. So it's a privilege. It really is. And if people learn from it, great. If people's cannabis improves, amazing. And especially if people are not in jail for it. That's ultimately the most important thing.
You touched briefly there about paying your respect to some of the people in cannabis and the legends. Uh, I want to thank you because it's going to become about the closest I'm going to get to thanking anybody anymore at High Times for whatever. But I appreciate you for giving a nod out to a close friend, and I think he's a legend, and other people do as well. But Sub, when he passed this year, you did put something out on your page, and High Times, gave a nod to him, and I appreciate that because, as all of us know, there was no real good way to say goodbye. There was no memorial or nothing. So it was little instances like that, and the Grow Tube this last weekend that have kind of tipped their hat to him. So I just want to say, as a close friend of Subs, thank you for tipping the hat and making that acknowledgement to what I thought he was a great man. You knew Sub too, and
Yeah.
that Sub Cool off air and Sub Cool on air were completely different people. So
Yeah.
I just
No,
wanted to appreciate.
he was an amazing friend, amazing grower, great confidant, a person that I've knew for many years. Actually, put him in High Times for the first time, top 10 strains of the year, way back, I think 2006, and sort of followed his career before that, even, the overgrow.com days. And we had been in contact even back then. And then, once he came out of the underground and all that, I mean, I had him on the show multiple times on different grow panels as well at different events. And, he could be brash and like you said, the on-air Sub and all that, but anyone who knew him, knew he was a good dude and wanted to help. And, I think felt the same way as you and I do about the plant, that we could never do enough for cannabis for what it's done for us. And he had also served time for cultivation in another lifetime. So he knew the price that people pay for loving the plant back then. And I think he was very passionate about that and about strains and about giving back to the people. I mean, he did a lot of philanthropic things as well. And so, yeah, it's very sad in his passing. But again, legends never die, and his genetics live on. And us talking about him and his books, the Dank, so that's his legacy. And we all have something that we leave behind. And I think Sub leaves behind a tremendous legacy of service to the plant. And was a great man. He'll be missed.
I appreciate that because I know I did at the time. I was very thankful of you for you and them to acknowledge it, and what he had done. So thank you for that. But now to kind of like hopefully pick things up a little bit, take us out of that little bit of lull there. Usually do a soundbite here. I know you've probably seen them talking about it there in chat. So what the soundbite is, I started this kind of from the beginning, and in hopes that it was going to go somewhere, and it has. It was going to be around 50. I was going to do this little soundbite, like clip type thing, but we blew right past 50, and I had a tragedy on 50, so I didn't quite make it. But so now it's going to be probably 100. So I'm gonna ask you for like a sound bite. The old like 80s when the musicians you'd come on and give the station identification and all that. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Hopefully, you can give me that sound bite. You know what I'm talking about? The old like radio identifications.
I think
Hi,
so.
this is blah blah blah. I'm on. Yeah, can you give me that sound bite, please?
Hey, this is Danny Danko, and you're listening to Fucking Talking Shit with Eagle.
Fucking yeah, first one
Or
too.
is it
Didn't even
talking fucking?
have. It's fucking talking shit with
Fucking talking
Eagle,
shit.
but I'm taking it. I'm
Take one.
taking it.
I can do more. I'll do more if you
I'll
want.
take another one if you want to do it.
Hey, this is Danny Danko, and you're listening to Fucking Talking Shit with Eagle.
Thank you. That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. I'm hoping to, right, like I said, around 100, I'm gonna fucking just like loop them, hopefully in order, and like put together a little like clip. That's
Nice.
something I like to do. So, have you had fun with this? Or do you like maybe reach out to you sometime in the future to get you back on and
Of
talk a
course.
little bit
Yeah.
more shit?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know I've
Anytime.
enjoyed this.
Anytime. It's been fun. It's definitely been enjoyable. Completely painless. Totally fun. And yeah, I mean, I love the community that you have here. Built around the show. It's really cool. People participate in the chat, and I can see them. You know, you can tell. There's a community there. It's really cool. It's really awesome. And I truly, like I said, I appreciate the support for my books and podcast. And it's an independent podcast. It's not a High Times podcast. It's just me and Mike. We own it. We run it. We got that Patreon page, like I said. A couple advertisers here and there, but other than that, we'd love it if people, want to check out the show. It's every week on Thursdays we put out a show. Today, just in a little while, we're going to put out our 5th show, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, follow my social media.
What time is that episode going to air so they know where
It'll
to
be
find
shortly. I think once I get off of this show, I'll have a little bit of time to put together the text for the show. But it's being edited right now. Typically comes out Thursday evenings. The guest this week is Nima from Cannabiotics, which is a grow operation in California and Nevada, who are really amazing growers on a pretty large scale. So pretty interesting what he has to say about craft cannabis and growing big. And we've had Jorge Cervantes and a bunch of different people. So at this point, it's just trying to teach people how to grow and have some fun. We got like little games that we play sometimes about cultivation and banter back and forth a little bit.
It's grow bud.
Yeah, grow bud yourself.
Right?
Grow bud yourself. Yeah, there's links to it on all my social media. And it's anywhere people listen to podcasts, basically Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever. And we're looking to do YouTube as well sometime in the near future. We've got a couple of videos of exclusive content on that Patreon page, but we're still sort of working out the kinks of getting it all integrated with YouTube and video and everything. But we have a blast, and hopefully people learn something about cultivation and cannabis, and do giveaways too. So there's products that you can get, and that's what we're doing now. Because again, like I said, we're independent and just trying to figure out during this whole pandemic how to get the information out there to people. I think there's a lot of people interested in home grow right now. Because they're stuck at home, and I think they're interested in home grow for cannabis, but I think they're also interested in fruits and vegetables and microgreens and all kinds of things. And I think there's not to make a pun, but there's a budding market for information and products for people to grow their own, and it's one of the the industries or whatever I think that's going to come out of this stronger than before.
You're absolutely right. Green 13 is a UK grower who was on the show the other night, and he sidelined me there for a second. I didn't know what was coming next. He was like, "Marijuana is a gateway," and I'm thinking, "Oh no, here we go. We're going to." And he looks right at me, and he's like, "No, marijuana is a gateway to horticulture." Because now I don't just grow marijuana; I am growing vegetables and flowers,
It's true.
and like
100% true. I mean, I learned so much about, plants from cannabis, and yeah, now I grow my own blueberries and raspberries, and yeah, I mean everything. We've got ornamental flowers and orchids, and I love houseplants. Um, and I don't think I would be as interested in them if I hadn't had the whole cannabis experience of cultivation. And that brings you closer to the earth and plants and the fungus that we talked about, and the mycelia. And when it just helps you to understand your connection to the planet, and how, the beauty of nature in all of its forms. I mean, it's phenomenal and fantastic that we have what we have in abundance on this planet. And but a lot of it, is a responsibility to protect it as well. Topsoil isn't a renewable resource. You have to improve your soil and have a living soil with worms and beneficial insects and bacteria and mycelia and everything, working in conjunction to improve year after year, and use less and less nutrients and bottled salts and all that.
Yeah, I expect great things out of your podcast over there. I know that you're going to be pulling in the heavy hitters. You got
Yeah, I mean,
access to a
like I
bunch of
said,
people that
well,
wouldn't
there's the
even talk to
five.
me.
No, I think, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. People are looking, I mean, I don't know. I think, yeah, don't sell yourself short, man. Reach out to people because, especially now, people got a lot of time and they want to share info, and everyone's looking to promote what they're doing as well. I mean, um, you know, it's a community, and being able to reach a community is incredible. I think, there's those shows that we put out recently, but we also have the old archive of 103 free weed episodes as well, including Sub Cool on several of those, and other people who we've lost along the way, and a lot of great information, and people from the political side, people from uh, you know comedians and musicians and artists of all different stripes, as well as all the big famous cultivators and seed breeders, and cup winners and all that. I mean, so one of the great pleasures of my life that we didn't talk about is handing someone their cannabis cup on stage. It's like such a thrill. It's an electric feeling when somebody wins an award for the first time, and they've been told, oh, it's fixed, or they've been told you'll never win, whatever it might be. And then boom, they brought the fire and they won the award. And, they're in shock a lot of times, or they're, sobbing and shaking. And you just know it's going to change their life. And you see it, I've seen it over the years change people's lives, particularly the ones that know how to handle it and what to do in that situation. But there's no feeling like it, because you just know uh, just what the meaning of this is, for that person, for their company, for their family, um, for their future. So it is a thrill every time you get to like announce the winner of a cannabis cup and then have them come up on stage and accept it. And they always say like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I always say the same thing. It's like, you earned it. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You earned this, and cherish it and enjoy it. And remember, there's going to be people who want to slice of your business now, and if you don't need them, uh, do it yourself. Because I've seen a lot of those partnerships and things where people come in and, oh, they got the money or whatever, and then basically they take over your company or whatever it might be. So that's typically my advice to people is, these money people need you more than you need them, because money, you can make money, you can borrow money, you can have people you trust and love invest in what you're doing. But a lot of times these, people who only have money, and they want your intellectual property or something that they want to gain from something you have. A lot of times they don't have your best interests at heart. Sometimes it seems obvious, but people get in that situation and get desperate, to profit immediately or to create something quick or whatever it might be. I think it's always better to do it yourself, or with your core group, people you know and trust, rather than try to go that like easy money route. But it is a thrill, always a thrill to give someone a cup, even if they've won 30 of them. It's still a thrill, but especially that first one.
Yeah, it is. I bet. I have yet to experience it, but maybe someday. Maybe someday. Uh, if things go well, we still have cups or whatever.
Yeah,
But that's the future. We'll see.
right.
So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the time you put into this. You graciously shake it off like it's nothing, but there's a lot. Like you just barely scratch the surface of the time spent, the long hours in the offices putting together and gathering information to put out there for us, to traveling to get back and forth dangerously to these locations, to just even traveling to set up cups and stuff like that, to current putting out your podcast that you're working on now. All takes long grueling hours for them few minutes of you know uh, laid back and enjoying it. There's a lot of time into that few minutes, editing, research, getting people, together and all that. And, thank you very much for putting your time and your life into that, to providing us and myself and people in the community information to grow and help us be activism, and just wake us up in general to all the things that are around us that we've been walking by and not paying any attention to. So that means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to others. When I'm not joking, them days that I was able to shake your hand and take them pictures, it really meant a lot. It put a spring in my step every time, not just for that day, for weeks on and after that.
Oh
It's
man, that's awesome. I truly appreciate it. When you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. There's certainly where a lot of work goes into it, but it's ultimately very rewarding work. And I wouldn't want to have any other job, really. I don't think, uh, it's to me, it's just so enjoyable to know that people are, reading my words and heeding my advice. It's an honor and a privilege, and I hope I do right by people and teach them the right stuff. And I feel like I do. Things have changed over time. I've obviously learned a lot, since I started out, and we'll continue to keep learning and keep sharing that information freely with people, because I never believed in strain hoarding, and I never believed in information hoarding. I think the more the merrier, and I think you should be able to make it, if your passion's there. And I would encourage people, to do what they love. And
with
thank
that
you.
being said, I can't even believe I'm even trying to end this episode. To be honest with you.
I'm happy to come on anytime. And, like I said, uh, this has been enjoyable for me. I love like reading the comments and seeing some people, even some names that I recognize, from other, chat sections or different social media and stuff like that. And, I feel like you got a really cool crew here, and it's a pleasure and honor to be a part of it. And again, like I said, anytime, let me know. This is
I
fun.
will.
This is fun for me. This is not work. Really.
I,
I mean,
I'm glad.
I get to do a dab, After this, I'm gonna roll a little joint with my raw papers. They don't pay me for that.
Yeah.
And, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I hope people enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I know they did. I know they did. They've been looking forward to this. If you remember, I know you do. There's been times where they've asked you on your page to come out. I couldn't believe it. They outright went on your page and asked you to come on. That's how
Yeah,
bad they
man.
wanted you to come on.
Yeah, I
I
said, just
couldn't
tell me a
believe that.
time, give me a time, and if it works for my schedule, I'll do it. And yeah.
I actually went on that night, Danny, and was like, leave that poor man alone. I want him on.
No, I appreciate it. It shows their passion. It really shows their passion, and it shows that they're interested, and that's really cool. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's great, and I think especially because, like you said, there's people from all over the world. You know what I mean? And they have this connection to the plant, and that gives them a connection to each other. And there's nothing greater. That's all we want in life is a connection with people, and cannabis is such a great connector. That like those of us who truly love it and are passionate, we just preach the word of cannabis, and we're the can evangelists, I guess. And I think, like I said, it just brings people together, and you've clearly brought these awesome people together. So I appreciate it, and thank you for having me.
Well, you introduced yourself to this community. Not that we didn't know who you were, but this is our formal introduction, and you're more than welcome to either pop in, the chat and say hello and honor us that way. It would be huge. And then if you're ever up late, I doubt you are because we've talked about this. You're a family man. It's respectable hours.
These days on occasion, you get a bout of
There's
insomnia.
Right on. Please check us out. We're on the same time zone. It's usually 11:30 to usually almost 4:20. That's usually the show hours. So, and how it usually rolls out is like, say, like a person like yourself will come on, and there's no implication on how long somebody has to say. So sometimes they go for that long and sometimes they check out. But if you happen to be up and check out the show and see that, it's what we call like an after sesh after, like, say, you or the guest is gone, and then I call in some people from the chat and you have to be you have to be on a past episode to be on, like, to say the after sesh. You know what I'm saying? So if the show's on, the guest checks out, and some of the after guests, which a lot of them are on now, I'll be like, "Hey, anybody want to hang out?" And like we'll get on 3 or 4 of them, and we'll talk, the rest of the night through. So if you ever get any insomnia and you see that we're on and we've got the panel on, you're more than welcome to pop in and go, "Hey, man, let me in." We'd be honored to talk with you when you can't sleep and talk to you until you're tired to go back to bed. So it would be an honor.
Cool.
So just
Awesome.
throwing it out there.
Appreciate
throwing
it.
it out there.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks for welcoming me, all you guys. Thanks, Mr. D's Nuts. Subscribe to the podcast. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, anybody that can subscribe, you can go to growbudyourself.com. Grow Bud Yourself. Kind of like go fuck yourself. But it's Grow Bud Yourself with an exclamation point. But just go to growbudyourself.com, and it'll have the links for all the different it is on Patreon too. So patreon.com/Danny Danko has all the links as well. And that's like the community of my show, is that Patreon page. That's where we, that's where the comments and the questions and everything come from. And you can actually tip us as creators to it on Patreon if you wish. If somebody wants a free copy of my book, I mean, technically not free, but a signed copy of my book is at the $25 a month level at Patreon. So hey, if you want a signed copy of the book and you want to support the show and get exclusive content and be part of that community, that's a great way to be part of it. But you don't have to spend any money. You can just subscribe and listen to the show. We truly appreciate any support you can give us. So and we want to give back, and make sure you grow bud yourself, and so you have free weed. I like to tell people, if you like free weed, you're going to love Grow Bud Yourself.
Well, I guess I should let you go so you can get that episode up so we can
Right.
go over there and listen to it here in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in the meantime, like I said, there's 4 episodes up of Grow Bud Yourself, 103 previous free reads going back to 2011, uh, and a new one going up tonight and every Thursday from here on. So truly appreciate the support, and anybody that wants to subscribe or become a part of that, love it. Thank you so much. Can't wait to come back here and visit with you guys again, and keep on growing.
Awesome. Well, keep that lookout for that DM because I will throw it out there again sometime soon. I'm not gonna call you in like tomorrow or nothing. I the respect period, but knowing that you're up to it, I will definitely throw that invitation out there again. So I
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
You have a great night and an amazing tomorrow, and good luck. Good luck with everything in the future. You don't need it. I know you've got great things coming your way, but it never hurts to say it.
I
So,
appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you
uh,
for your kind words, and thank you for doing what you do as well. Because again, you might not know it, but this reverberates throughout history. Like after we're gone, people will still be checking this stuff out and learning from it, and that's really important. So thank you as well.
your kind words, and I look to talk to you soon.
Thank you. It's been fun talking shit with Eagle.
All right. Well, with that being said, I got to check out and do some work myself because I'll be back at 11:30, putting on doing another sesh. It's a double episode day. Uh,
Right on. Well, thank you to everyone in the chat as well. Thanks for all the kind words and support. You guys are awesome, and keep up the great work, and grow bud yourself.
Thank you, sir, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Have a good one. Mr. Danny Danko. Can you believe that? So thankful that he was able to come on and spend some time with us. Holy cow, 3 hours. 3 hours he was gracious enough to come on and spend with us. Please go over there and subscribe to his podcast and show him some love, and appreciate it. I greatly appreciate his time and everything that he's done. So, as you guys know, I'll be back here at 11:30 for the normal hour show. Tonight, I believe Canic Queen Genetics will be here. Smiley's Gardens will be here, and anybody else that wants to jump in, hit me up between now and then, and we'll see if we can't make that happen. So until then, you guys have an amazing day, the rest of your day until later. Do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness change lives. I say it over and over and over again. It's so true, so true. And I'll see you in a little bit. Thank you guys. Love you. See you in a little bit. Peace.